Owen fucking Meany, dude.
Was not expecting the book to be this good and this like touching, heartfelt, and like not in a sappy, cheesy way either. Like is done very well. Yeah, I was not expecting. Well, I guess I was expecting the religious angle a little bit because like the prayer is in the title, but I didn't really expect it to like really affect me this deeply.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually good. And honestly, yeah, because you and I, well, let's just start. Fuck it.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy. Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! You know,
Resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
We're back here with another episode of Heavy Board, and we are back with friend of the pod and friend IRL, Eric at Bazillion Plus, known as Organized Mute Online. Eric, welcome back to Heavy Board.
Thanks for having me. Good to be
Of
back.
course, bro. Of course. And the listeners that listen to this know Eric has been, I think this is your third time on the show now, dude. Like you're going to become a regular, and you're going to hear more from Eric too, listeners, as we get into this, because we have a plan coming here. Several plans. We keep making them over drinks usually, and then eventually executing those plans. But this was a plan. This was the beginning of a plan. How did this even start? I think you and I were getting dinner, drinking, and we started talking about John Irving.
Yeah,
And then we're like,
and
man, all these movie adaptations.
mhm. And I remember because I'd read one of his books, but and I loved it and always wanted to read more. And you said you hadn't read his stuff. I'm like, might be like a good idea to read the book, watch the movie, and he's got like at least four or five that have been made into films.
And they were like very culturally important, like when they came out too. So many of the books that were made into films were like iconic like films. You know, the big
Mhm.
one, I guess, Cider House Rules, yeah, World According to Garp. And then Eric and I were just talking. We're like, man, I've never read. Yeah, I was like, I never read this. Eric had only read a one or two, and I was like, well, why don't we do like some Irving books, at least the movie adaptation ones? And then we ended up, drinking some more and figuring out that, yeah, why don't we start with this one? John
Yeah,
Irving's A Prayer for Owen Meany, and the film version that came out in 1998 titled Simon Birch, that was very loosely based on this novel. But yeah, we're going to get into it here. So yeah, as always, Eric, first kind of thing, what's your history with Irving and this book in particular, or just Irving in general, all that kind of
um,
thing?
well, when I was growing up, he was always like talked about in like along with like John Cheever, Updike, Philip Roth, like the great American writers. Like, he just writes the great American novel each time.
Yeah, that
And
phrase is going to keep coming up too, listeners. Yeah, it's a good phrase for it.
and I guess like I never really read anything. I first saw the movie World According to Garp, and then years later I read the book. And after that, I mean, I always wanted to read his stuff. I was just never picked it up because yeah, I saw Cider House Rules and some of the other movies. I saw Simon Birch when it came out.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, just never read the novels. So yeah, and so it's interesting because I've read a lot of like Roth and Updike and like writers from his era
Yeah.
were also widely praised, but I never really got too much into his work, and so like, that's why it's nice finally reading this.
Yeah, same. Mine was even less. Yeah, I had never read anything by Irving, but it was again one of those things people would mention his name, you'd hear it brought up, and then of course, yeah, I watched Cider House Rules because that was a huge Oscar, film when it came out, and even when it came out, because that came out like 2001, so I was even a little too young then. But it would always play on like TV all the time. So it was like that movie and like Shawshank Redemption and like a few other kind of late 90s, like early 2000s, kind of big dramatic Oscar pictures, let's call it,
Mhm.
that would just always be on TV all the time growing up. And like you just watch them that way. Like that's how I saw Shawshank. That's how I saw like all these movies that are based on these kind of books like this. But yeah, I've had no experience reading Irving or anything like it. I just know from the movies. Simon Birch, I remember seeing as a kid, but like we were talking about it, I don't think I'd seen the movie in maybe 20 years, almost 20 years, like since it came out.
Mhm.
And that was another one that would always be on TV too. So I don't even think I saw it in theaters. Like I just saw it on TV when it was playing, or we rented it from Blockbuster, I think, because it was like a big tearjerker movie or whatever that came out.
That's how I saw it too. Yeah,
Yeah.
we rented it from Blockbuster because it came out in '98, so I was probably like 18 or 19, and then yeah, so I just rented everything from Blockbuster. It was the era where everyone saw every movie. That was just one that I randomly picked up.
Right, you just saw him. Everybody had seen Simon Birch. I bet people listening to this are like, "Oh yeah, that movie." Like it's like one of those ones you almost forget about,
Yeah.
but like how big it was during the culture at a certain time.
Mhm.
But yeah, and then always next question, Eric, is always, yeah, how did it read? How did it read for you?
Uh, Really enjoyable. Very easy to read. Um, what I really liked about it is I wasn't expecting that the narrator to kind of go back and tell us what's going on in his life in between him telling us about his childhood with Owen Meany. But I really like that. So the way he structured it was great, and the ending was like just that was a page turner. Last 50 pages or so,
Yeah.
like it's everything was culminating to that point, and like that's just what he left you with. And so I thought it was paced really well, even though it's a pretty big novel. Um, it sort of seemed like a fast read, and I was kind of amazed at how much time he spent on this. Like the first half of the novel seems like it's pretty much all about like the Christmas pageant or something or the
Yeah,
plays.
yeah.
And the rest of the novel like speeds through, like not too fast, but like gets a little quicker. I just like time elapses a lot more quicker, but really focuses like that first half seems like it just takes place around the same like a few days or weeks.
Yeah, same. It was a pretty it is one of those, I don't want to call it like a beach read, but it is like, Irving clearly wanted this to be readable to everybody. He didn't want it to be like some, to really time consuming thing. It was a book that's meant to be not read quickly, but read relatively easily. It's not like there's like really difficult images or anything to pick out or stuff, although there's plenty of that in there. It's just there, it's just obvious. Read really well, especially that first chapter was like really
Mhm.
strong opening chapter. Um, and I think that's only like 40 pages or something, but it was just a really strong entrance into this. And then you kind of move along the whole time. And thinking of how he structured it too, I was thinking while reading this, and you and I had been talking while we were reading this too, all that. But the way he structured it with the narrator kind of telling the story from the past and going back and forth between the past and the current day. Obviously, that he's talking about like 1987, 1988 is where the narrator would be living in current day because this novel came out in 89, so it's supposed to be around that time, present day. And then he's going back to the 50s and 60s with his childhood, with like his childhood best friend, Owen Meany here. And like that used to be such a common way to write a novel. Like a novels used to just be more commonly, it just was just more common to be structured like that with like a one main narrator who maybe isn't even the main character, although he is. Really, Owen is the main character.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, it's kind of almost I wanted to call it kind of like a classic novel structure that really works. Yeah.
Yeah, it works well, especially when the narrator was saying, like, the reason I keep a diary is because Owen Meany kept a diary.
Yeah.
And like, then you just realize, oh, yeah, he's just putting in diary entries because he has the date. on each one, like, January 7th, 1988 or whatever. And so, yeah, they read like diary entries. And so, yeah, it makes a lot more sense, especially when he reveals that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we talked when you mentioned it here when we were starting this kind of, yeah, I wasn't quite, I mean, obviously, yeah, you said prayers in the title, so you should think about that. But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a timely read for me in terms of just the faith aspect of it, the Christian themes. It was kind of like you said, I wasn't really expecting that, and then you kind of get into it. It is. I don't know, for me in my time, and regular listeners know this, the kind of the idea of faith, it's been really interesting to me. And Eric and I have been having multiple conversations about this IRL when we just kind of talk about faith and all of that. And it just, I don't know why, man. It just, things started synchronizing here, and all of a sudden we get that, we're reading this book together. I was like, damn, this is very appropriate given our like conversations over the past couple months. I was like, man, this is great. I wanted to ask you about the quotes because the first couple the quotes that start the novel, uh, basically introducing faith and prayer right away. Like just and listeners know it's common for somebody to have like maybe one or two quotes from something to kind of thematically frame the book before you get started or something like that. But that first one is from like yeah, the letter of Paul to the Philippians.
Yeah.
Have no anxiety about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God.
Yeah. I mean, it really like drives home the point that we don't have control over our own lives, our own destiny, and what's going to happen. Um, and that's why, have no anxiety. Like, just we shouldn't really worry about that. Like, let God know what you want, and He will provide what you need, or what is your, whatever it is to fulfill your destiny on earth, your purpose. And that really, like, I mean, that's what Owen Meany was all about. Like he believes he had certain destiny to be a hero, and he could even like see how it's going to happen. He had dreams. He knew when it was going to happen,
Almost a
and
prophet, like,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's sort of like the opposite of everyone else who has no idea how they're going to die or when.
And have
And
all these doubts about their faith. There's a lot of, even the main narrator. I mean, the whole thing starts with how much he admires Owen just because he seemed like the only person he ever knew that never had a doubt, about his faith in some way.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so Owen is kind of like the opposite of that. He should have like the most anxiety in a way,
Right.
but also, I don't know, maybe there is some sort of great weight taken off your shoulders if you know you're not going to die today, but it's going to be years in the future. Um, and yeah, so yeah, that quote's great. It kind of drives home that point that I guess, quotes are something that's always best to look at. Like, I guess you could read them before, but look at them after you read the whole book, because then it really just is like, oh, I get exactly why Irving chose to put that quote in there.
Yeah, and it frames the whole thematic thing where like the very last line is him literally doing that, right? Let your requests be made known to God.
Mhm.
Like the very last line of the novel is what like, I want him back. God, I want
Yeah,
Owen Meany back. Kind of, it is basically just describing almost, we could think of it that way. It's almost like the simplistic, not even simplistic, but just kind of like a baseline, like, oh, this is what prayer is, right? Letting your request be made known.
yeah. Oh yeah, the
Uh,
last one. Oh God, please give him back. I shall
yeah,
keep asking you.
yeah,
Like that, I shall keep asking you is like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna keep telling you this all the time, because that's uh that's his request to God. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
what is that? It's
And
great.
it's interesting too. So, okay, we have this first one, basically just like a quote from the Bible here, and there's scripture all throughout this novel, listeners, we're going to get to. And then there's two other quotes. There's three in total on this. The next one is about doubt, really, where it says, Not the least of my problems is that I can hardly even imagine what kind of an experience a genuine, self-authenticating religious experience would be without somehow destroying me in the process. How could God reveal himself in a way that would leave no room for doubt? If there was no room for doubt, there would be no room for me.
Yeah. Again, it kind of goes back to Owen knowing his own death.
And you think of like kind of the character, like the main character himself, who openly says like his struggle with his faith, and then you have like the Reverend Merrill, and so there's like characters throughout, his grandmother, his mother, who just switches churches like willy-nilly, it seems, until you get to a certain point and realize why. Like there
Mhm.
is this kind of, yeah, I don't know, everybody but Owen has this room for doubt thing.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, it's just interesting how those are framed right up against each other. And then the last one is, yeah, any Christian who is not a hero is a pig. Yeah. So just
Yeah, I don't know
interesting.
why he put that one in there, but that's sort of like, I mean, yeah, Owen wanting to be a hero, but it's more of like, it's almost like something Owen would say.
Yeah.
It's very much, yeah, like something Owen would say. Kind of that like just snarky humor of his.
Yeah, absolutely. And that and just kind of I think there I mean it like we said, if you get to the bottom, when you get to the end of this novel, you start to understand why those three quotes that are almost in conflict with one another are starting this whole novel, because it is about that kind of the constant conflicts of those three things all
Mhm.
together. And like you said, I didn't even think about that until you finished the novel. So reading through, you see these quotes, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of a thematic setup. And then you kind of get to the end and then you look back, even just discussing it like this, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, it makes way more sense with all of that. And of course, we have to talk about the very first sentence of the entire novel, which I think is technically page three. But like he's almost tells you the entire story in this first sentence here. Almost, very brief summary. Uh, I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice, not because of his voice, or because he was the smallest person I ever knew, or even because he was the instrument of my mother's death, but because he is the reason I believe in God. I am a Christian because of Owen Meany. That's the very first sentence of this entire novel.
Yeah.
And I just thought, yeah, what do we think? What do we obviously foreshadowing, but yeah, what do we think? I mean, that's it's a powerful first sentence. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it sort of sets up Owen as being almost like this Christ-like, baby Christ figure. I mean, he he obviously didn't really he had his doubts about his own faith and his religion. It's like a town where everyone goes to church, but not everyone's like that serious about it, it seems. Um, I don't know. Yeah, it's everything about Owen's life, everything Owen stood for kind of gives him the same faith that I guess Christ of like true believers in Christianity. He got that same type of faith from Owen. And so it's that faith in something greater than you that controls your destiny, which I think is kind of enlightened him to faith in Christianity.
yeah, yeah. And I was just thinking like how powerful that is. Like, that's the very first sentence we learned all this about this boy who we don't know about, but obviously his name's in the title. But just like what it sets up for a reader too, in terms obviously this is craft wise, like kind of what a huge thing to say, right? Like not only are you talking about faith, a huge thing that so many novels have been written about, losing faith, gaining faith, miracles, all these different stories throughout history, religious or not, the kind of center, there's all kinds of stuff we could point to, but also just kind of like the fact that I believe because of this guy, because of this person, and then you're just immediately hooked. Like immediately, what a hook for a novel. I mean, get you right in there on this. Like, oh wow. But also, I think it does kind of. I don't know. I mean, we have the foreshadowing, but it's also just kind of almost like he envied Owen Meany in a way. envied his surety of his faith in some way. What am I thinking of? Okay, yeah, so page 24. Do we have the same copy, by the way? Is this the
Yeah, but mine's you have like the trade paperback.
yeah, something
You got
like
the
that.
trade. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have like the small paperback.
Okay, okay.
So
In my in mine it's in page 24, but it's in that first chapter where he's still talking about like the Sunday school where they're like lifting him up and stuff
mhm,
when the teacher leaves. But Johnny, the narrator, says in this, I believe my participation in abusing him in Sunday school, and him being Owen Meany, listeners, was faintly hostile and inspired by the greatest difference between us. He believed more than I did. And although I was always aware of this, I was most aware in church.
mhm.
So I don't know. I was just thinking about that line and then that very first sentence, how it kind of sets up this dynamic for Johnny himself too, because obviously the book's about Owen and Owen's faith and Owen's story and all of that, but it's also about this Johnny Wheelwright character, the narrator, who I don't know, like there's this like little bits of truth that come out with something like this. Like he said, maybe I participated in the mild bullying because it's kind of described as like a very mild children bullying thing. Like not that I don't know. I feel like Irving goes out of his way in that first scene when they talk about lifting Owen up in the Sunday school classes when the teacher leaves the room and like passing him around the room. They made it, I feel like Irving goes out of his way to make it seem like it's not malicious bullying.
Yeah, it was more
It's
like Owen was having fun. Like he didn't really seem to mind it in the book, if I remember
right.
right. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like yeah, they're all just having fun,
Especially like, yeah, if you have like the little guy or something like that. I mean, that's very common when you're little kids.
and that sets up the whole history of him lifting up Owen physically, which kind of is a in different ways is a motif throughout the
Yeah.
book.
Which all comes back to the end. Yeah. Yeah. Which is great when that comes back. Yeah. Because there was a point with the lifting up, like the shot practice. I was
Mhm.
getting so bored of reading scenes with that at a certain
Yeah,
point. And
like
then
why are
like,
you doing this?
I better, I'm more like, why are you describing it so much? I felt like being like, Jesus, like this better pay off. This is like the sixth time we've had to hear about this shot being practiced.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, Owen Meany believes more than Johnny Wheelwright,
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
and there's almost an envy from Johnny that he wishes he could believe as much as Owen,
Yeah.
even in his adult life, like when you're jumping back and forth.
Hmm. No, yeah, that's kind of like that's why I always say it's like yeah, Owen is like his Christ, something he could actually see in front of him, not just where you hear a preacher talk about stuff and read a story, but like something miraculous right in front of you.
And things like we're gonna get to examples here too, but like the like where there were points when like young boys where Owen would be the one insisting they do the right thing when
Mhm.
something was happening,
Yeah.
which is again unusual for because when we meet these boys, they're like 11 years old, and then you follow them basically until they're like 22-ish, roughly.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I guess you follow Johnny even further along, like in his 40s, because he's the one narrating in the present day stuff. But the story of Owen and Johnny is really, yeah, you constantly follow them for like, yeah, like 15 years, basically boyhood. You follow them through boyhood from like 11 years old on, and yeah, it was just so interesting to me. I was like, damn, this is already starting out with these kind of little bits of truth where he said, I don't know. I mean, Owen is maybe more so when we talk about Dan Needham or whatever, because I want to talk about him too. Kind of these they're like saintly figures throughout this novel,
Yeah.
like just people that are just like always doing the right thing, even like when it's so detrimental to them to do the right thing.
Hmm.
Uh, Owen, Dan Needham. Even maybe his mother, you could argue, but I guess we learn a little later that she didn't always do that. But at least appeared to always be doing this at a great cost to herself, doing the great, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, that's an interesting one too.
and I think that is kind of like an under talked about thing about faith, I think, where it's a small thing, but it's also like, having the faith that like doing the right thing will be better off in the long run.
Mhm.
There's a faith in that is maybe, everybody's obsessed with the big picture stuff. Do you believe or not? And that's harder to get an answer to out of some people than it is to be like, well, are you doing the right thing or not? Like, because that's kind of an act of faith too, to do the right thing, even when it's at a great cost.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where I'm going, but I was
Well,
just
I mean, you
thinking,
have
but yeah,
to like to do the right thing. You have to believe that there's something above you, like there's something bigger
right,
than yourself.
right,
So yeah, you can't just be totally selfish. It means it requires having faith in something beyond just yourself.
right. And it isn't just like, yeah, maybe not big picture, like, oh, believing in God or something, but like even smaller picture, like, yeah, like this is the good for the good of the world. But then, yeah, all of that stuff, how that comes to be, usually through religious practice. But yeah, I was just like, man, alrighty. So you have this, and the opening chapter was the one where, that you get the death of Johnny's mother
Yeah.
in that first one,
In
and
this, the death of his mother, like after that first sentence where he's like, talks about I'm a Christian because of Owen Meany, I believe in God because of Owen Meany. And then you find out what happens. It's like just the contrast, and that leaves you just eager to find out more about Owen Meany and Johnny's friendship.
yeah, I mean that first scene, and listeners that know anything about Irving, so I was looking this up. I think this first chapter was published on its own in the New Yorker before the novel came out. Don't quote me on the year, but I think it was like 87 or something like that, around there. 86, 87, when the first chapter was published in the New Yorker. And Eric and I talked about this a little bit IRL. We were just like, the first chapter does almost feel like it was like it could be a complete short story. The way you get all this information and you kind of get that emotional arc through it, and you get the big payoff at the end of that first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it is pretty heart-wrenching right away. I texted Eric when we were reading this, and I was just like, after reading that first chapter, I was like, oh my God, like I'm already tearing up at this first chapter. Like this is going to be a rough read. But
Yeah.
it wasn't even that rough. I mean, there were parts, but yeah, just it's incredible how Irving could weave this kind of deep emotional depth type thing that just also with this kind of small town. I want to get to the small towns and kind of the small kind of characters that maybe aren't very good at expressing themselves. Like I was thinking, and you and I talked about this a little bit at dinner that one time where it was just like Mr. Chickering in that scene when the mother dies, the baseball coach, like the fat, like alcoholic baseball little league coach at this small town.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that depiction really got me going when I was like, oh wow, in that chapter for the death of the mother. But it was just something about like this fat slob, being so tender, really, like about the dead body, like where he was the first one there, realizes she's dead, and he's just kind of this sloppy fat guy that kind of yells at the kids, but then all of a sudden he's this very tender, trying to prevent Johnny. He's like, don't look at it, Johnny, don't look at it. He like puts his coat over his head and like, yeah, just closes his mother's eyes, pinches her knees together so she's not, exposed or anything as she's like splayed out on the ground, and like pulled her skirt down like so that she wasn't showing panties or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just something about that, like what it was like that less expressive characters when like something like that happens and like they don't know what to say, so they just start like doing things, or you're hearing their narrations and stuff, and it just always gets me in this way, like, oh man, like what do you do in that situation? You've all these little kids around, the entire town was out watching this game, and this woman just got this horrific freak accident, uh which we learn maybe wasn't a freak accident.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that too, miracles versus coincidences versus And I think that has to do with faith too, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think of Johnny's mother's death scene? Yeah, I'm rambling about it.
Oh no, yeah, so I what I really liked about the Mr. Chickering, the coach. So yeah, that scene, I think why it's so effective is because, you know, like he's just a coach. He doesn't
Right.
have to be that compassionate towards the kid, but obviously he knows that. So Johnny doesn't have a father. His father's unknown.
Yeah.
Um,
The town knows that he's like the bastard of Gravesend or whatever.
yeah, that's what they call him. And like, um, so the coach just kind of, it's just a very nice scene where he just feels this urge to like protect Johnny. He's kind of like the only one there. Just really like being an adult in the kid's life and looking out for him.
Yeah.
Um, but what stuck out, especially later in the book, he kind of goes back to the time when Owen Meany hit that foul ball and the ball hit his mom in the head, killing her. Um, is he always points out like, oh, if this person hadn't walked in front of Owen Meany, if they had just swung and struck out, then Owen would never have gotten up to bat and my mom would still be alive. Right. It was like
Yeah.
it was like the end of the game. They weren't going to win. It was just like pointless to even play. Right. And so he's just like, why did this guy have to hit a single for this guy? Why couldn't, if he had just gotten out, none of this would have happened. And it goes in that whole kind of butterfly effect thing. And Johnny's always was grappling with like if things didn't work this way, if only this hadn't happened, and because he doesn't understand, he doesn't have that full faith that Owen Meany does. Is like, oh no, it's supposed to happen this way.
Yeah.
Like everything is supposed to happen this way. You can't control it, and he's always trying to go back and like see if he could control things, like in his head.
Yeah.
That's what I really like. That yeah, this whole scene kind of sets up everything that Johnny keeps going back to in his
Yeah.
memory.
And I mean, think of how traumatic that would be. I mean, it's almost like obviously it's traumatic and we get some of that, but it's almost like, yeah, how does 11-year-old boy even process that? Like, I mean, he doesn't, right? Like, so you kind of see it through the friendship of him and Owen. And I mean, for context listeners too, like, his mother is supposed to be, of this kind of old money family. They're losing the money, but they're also still have it. His grandmother's like some heiress who's never worked a day in her life, and her two daughters, one of which being Johnny's mom, is has this kid out of wedlock, and for them to be kind of a well-to-do family in this small town, that's quite a scandal for her to have this bastard child, especially considering this starts in the 50s,
Mhm.
when does it start? Like 54 or something like that, when they're like 11 years old.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, obviously that's a bigger deal now than it back then than it is now for like at least culturally, you'll still get side eyes now, but like you're not going to get that kind of ostracization. But also his mother was, the most beautiful woman in the town. Everybody wanted her. She was gorgeous and flirty and like, and also a good person in her own right too. But like, yeah, so that makes it even more tragic, really, that this great beauty was taken out in this kind of way. Uh, but yeah, I mean, how do you even process that as an 11-year-old boy, really? I mean, you don't. Yeah. Uh, I don't know. It's just so tragic right off the bat with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No
No, I
pun
mean,
intended right off the bat. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he always goes back and like he even admits, like, I'm still trying to process my mother's death. I still like think about like, even yeah, he always thinks about like who was in the crowd, like what was happening, like sort of this desperate attempt to try to change his memory of what happened that just it might actually change what really happened, but it doesn't.
Yeah. And there was a really great quote about small towns on page 73 on my version And anyone that's lived in a small town or smaller town, like I don't really small towns like the one in the novel don't really exist anymore,
Yeah.
you know? Most of those small towns are just like fent and meth labs, you know, like
Yeah, they get, yeah, swallowed up by that.
and the railroads have all shut down, which happens eventually in the novel. Kind of not as obviously the Vietnam War takes up more space than like let's say the deindustrialization of that was happening in like the 70s, you know, leading to where we are now with everything going overseas and factory jobs shutting down and kind of
Mhm.
destroying those small towns, those old steel towns, those old coal towns, those types of places. But there's this quote about small towns that I thought Irving wrote. This it really does capture it perfectly. Where my cousins, and this is when his cousins see Owen for the first time when they're like little kids. He's like, my cousins stared at him, and I feared the worst. But I suddenly realized what small towns are. They are places where you grow up with the peculiar. You live next to the strange and the unlikely for so long that everything and everyone become commonplace. My cousins were both small towners and outsiders. They had not grown up with Owen Meany, who was so strange to them that he inspired awe. Yet they were no more likely to fall upon him or to devise ways to torture him than it was likely for a herd of cattle to attack a cat. And it is this kind of like, I don't know, yeah, like Owen is so small that he could be easily bullied, but he has this aura about him that makes people not default to that. I don't know what it is. But then also this kind of, you know, realizing what small towns are. There are places where you grow up with the peculiar,
Mhm.
where you kind of get used to like strange things. And I think this is part of what makes me, you know, I'm always a sucker for like a small town story or something like that.
Yeah.
Like this, maybe it's just the American in me or something, but I think there's a romanticism and something to it too. But I think it's also, it makes it more interesting. I'm thinking even of like Coen brothers, especially early Coen brothers, you know,
Hmm.
like even thinking like, yeah, like Blood Simple or something like it's about this small, you know, backwoods Texas town where something goes wrong, you know, the plan, some like stupid scheme goes wrong and then it blows up. It just
Yeah.
makes it more interesting in a way where like you're in this small town where everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows who's fucking who. Everybody knows, you know, who's dating who. Everybody knows who the pastors are and stuff. Like it is this kind of, and
Yeah.
I've never lived in a town like this. I've lived in a smaller city, which I talk about on the podcast when I was in grad school. And, you know, that was not by any definition a small town, you know, especially like Americana style town like this story takes place in that had like 75,000 people in it or something. But a small city by city standards. And even with that many people, there was this strange thing where like when you go to the grocery store, you're seeing everybody you know,
Yeah.
like that doesn't happen in a big population center because there's just so many people. Like the statistically, why would you, you know? And maybe every once in a while you run into somebody you know, or like a student of yours or something, you know, at the grocery store, but like you don't run into like everybody you know every time you leave the house. And like when you're in a smaller place, you do. And it does sort of change the dynamic, maybe even about small things like being judged or something because you know everybody who's judging you as opposed to it just being strangers or something. You know, if you have a weird outfit or a black eye
Mhm.
or something, you know. I don't know, something about the small towns that just enhances a story like this. It's almost maybe it's a quaintness. I don't know. Maybe I'm just romanticizing it too much.
Well,
But
I mean, I think it's, since everyone knows each other, like everyone, you can't hide anything,
right,
right?
yeah,
So, I mean, I think nowadays, especially, it brings us back to this feeling of like not having, smartphones, internet, being on the computers, because, it's sort of like people can track other people with their phones now, have your location turned on or something, where someone is. But it used to just be like, oh, yeah, no, saw him. He was walking down the street, 5 minutes ago, like, and everyone knows each other. There's nothing to hide behind. Like, it kind of is just like, it's just reminiscing about the past, I think.
yeah,
It's
eh,
not like, yeah, it's not even like necessarily small towns. It's just what was and isn't anymore. Because, yeah, you can't find, like, there's probably a couple, there's
right.
a few, but There's not a lot of towns like this where it's, population 200 and everyone knows each other.
Yeah, not everybody's on meth or something nowadays. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy. But I think that you're right. It's interesting too with this the technological aspect, whereas it's almost like the novels looking back, and this is before cell phones were even like smartphones, where cell phones were around in the 80s, but they were expensive and huge and bulky and like would drop the call all the time and were, poor quality calling and stuff. But like this was before the smartphone era, and it seems even somebody like Irving, who grew up in a small town America, was looking back on it with this sense of, yeah, even something simple like you think about the cell phone era where we're all, you don't need to know where somebody's going to be. Like when Owen's upset and he leaves and rides his bike and they can't find him,
Mhm.
they keep asking his best friend, where would he go? Where would he go? You know him. Where
Mhm.
would he go if he was feeling bad? And then Johnny's kind of like, I kind of know where he would go, and they go and find him and he's there. And it's like, you had to know people on a deeper level than in the smartphone era, where you could just text them, where are you? You had to know where like your friend was going to go in this thing or where they would normally be. And I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's like a deeper connection that we're longing for too. From
Mhm.
like a small town, maybe gives us a setting where that's already implied. And yeah, there is just something so beautifully quaint about it that I find it irresistible when it's a small town story like this.
Mhm.
Yeah. And especially New Hampshire. I don't know much about New Hampshire, but New England, blah, 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 blah stuff. But seems like maybe in New Hampshire there might still be a few like quaint little towns like that, but maybe not. They're all just like retirees living there now.
I mean, yeah,
There's like
like
no industry anymore. It's just like retirees living in like a quaint, beautiful place.
I mean, if there's any place, I'm sure, there's some in New Hampshire,
Right.
Vermont, like Maine. Like Stephen King writes about like small towns like this all the time, and that's like the same area. So
Yeah.
yeah, all up and down that area. I don't know. There probably is. I mean, even in the big cities in Vermont, like you go to Burlington, it's a
Yeah.
big city, but it feels pretty small. Like it feels small. So,
And there is something about that. Yeah, maybe connection is what people are longing for in that way too when you talk about. And this is in the 80s even. You could look back and nostalgically think
mhm,
about towns like these thriving kind of industry, small towns with a few thousand people. And it's interesting, there's this YouTube channel I like, which is it's this dumb guy that he just drives around America and kind of films it, and goes to these kind of off the beaten path cities and just kind of drives and walks around and shows you these like decaying small towns all over the country. It is like, they all peaked with their population between the 30s and 50s, usually, all of these kind of decaying towns all over the country. And listeners out there, if you've never just drive through a state, any state, it doesn't matter if it's like New York City, like it's New York State or like rural Mississippi, you will find small little towns. Like even where I'm from in Maryland, if you just drive through, the less populated parts, there are these kind of dying towns everywhere.
mhm,
And just, yeah, I don't know, something about those that just, I don't know, make us think that it's special. There's something in it that just possibilities start to build. Or I don't know, maybe it's just like a fiction thing where like the social dynamic is already there because it's a small town and you can work within that a little better. The drama's heightened because everybody knows about it when something dramatic happens, or I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting to think about. I kept thinking about it while reading this. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, that YouTube guy, he drives around and yeah, they all peak at that time, and it's just crazy how like these towns were they were thriving with thousands of families like living in them. And then slowly from the 1950s on, it just ticked down, 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 down. Then the railroad shuts down, 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 down. Then the actual industry's gone. Whatever factory or mining thing was there is gone because the railroad's gone. Then it just keeps going, keeps going. Now all industry is gone, and it's literally like the median age of some of these decaying towns is like 60 something. Like
yeah,
because it is just people that lived there when it was thriving and just like can't afford to leave, so they're just like living there their whole life. Everyone that could afford to leave, like there's no young people, all their kids left because there's no jobs,
yeah,
in that town, so they moved to a city or something, and It really is kind of a sad process when you look at
Yeah.
that decay.
The town dies when they die, pretty much,
Yeah.
It's like,
And
yeah.
there's going to be a lot of that happening too with the population kind of graying here. It's going to be even worse. But also like, all right, I love this idea too. I like Owen, I like Owen Meany in this, but it's also just kind of the special purposes, like the things that he says that I relate to. On page 86, he talks about, or Johnny's talking about this, but it's Owen that gives him the idea, right? He says, that was when I first began to think about certain events or specific things being, quote, important and having special purpose. Until then, the notion that anything had a designated, much less a special purpose, would have been cuckoo to me. I was not what was commonly called a believer then, and I'm a believer now. I believe in God, and I believe in the special purpose of certain events or specific things. Let's say, what do we think of that? What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, initially when I read that, I was like, obviously he's talking about, like for me, he's talking about his mom getting hit with the baseball and his best friend being the one that does it. And I mean, there's such kind of like just a cruelness to that. It's like, I mean, not only would God take your mother away, but he'd have your best friend be the one that's the instrument to do that
Right.
on accident, but still. Um, and by the end, I realize I think he's talking about Owen Meany's purpose in
Yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah. In that, yeah, where Owen would always stress this.
Hmm.
And I think
But
this is the scene where post-death they're like exchanging gifts, right? Because they don't know what to say because they're 11-year-old boys. How do you talk to your best friend after you just accidentally killed his mother? So they're like exchanging gifts with each other, kind of not talking. And yeah, I don't know. And that's when he starts stating, he's like, that's looking back on it, it kind of taught me that, yeah, I believe things have special purposes, even if it's a dumb object, something we
mhm,
romanticize. And that's, I think, why it stood out to me too, because I love that. I love that idea. And maybe that's an aspect of faith. Believing that this object has meaning, even if it doesn't inherently have any, like a baseball or something,
mhm,
or people. So a lot of times, some people, oh, it has a signature on it or something that makes it special. But even if it's just like a little trinket, something, I always notice this when I move places, like when I start packing things up, especially like little trinkets or something that just sit there, don't really have a purpose.
mhm,
I, 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 f- I can never get rid of them. Like I'm like, oh, should I get rid of this? And it's like, no, I can't. I don't know why, but it just means so much to me to have this thing here. I just can't part with it. Not that it would kill me or something if I lost it in a fire, but I just mean like it's still just kind of like, oh man, like some things do have a special purpose. Some things are more important than others. And it
mhm,
doesn't necessarily mean, we're talking about government policy or something, although of course that's important, but like we're talking about like the personal level. Like some things do have more importance than others, even if it is something small and stupid, that isn't necessarily like worth money or valuable in that way, monetarily.
mhm,
And I think there is this level of just like there has to be specific things that have special purposes and that actually fills us up with something, uh
mhm,
contentment, faith, belief, whatever, like it fills you up with this kind of special purpose. This is why, I mean, they talk about it in the novel, like kind of the rituals of church or something put special purpose on certain objects. And the reason for that is because it makes it more important, like it really does emphasize the sacredness of the ritual, maybe. So like
mhm.
maybe something like even Owen's baseball cards, or in this chapter specifically, the chapter is literally called the armadillo. It's about the armadillo that Dan Needham gave him or whatever.
Mhm.
He just put a special purpose on this stuffed armadillo. Like if his mother didn't die and all this stuff didn't happen, that armadillo probably wouldn't have been as special and wouldn't have had a special purpose or an important place in his life.
Yeah.
But now it does. And yeah, I don't know. I just was so fascinated by the special purposes stuff. Because even me, somebody like me, I would say something like books, and even having like you would like you're talking to friends about books like we're doing now is just that has a special importance to me. Maybe not something that's like, oh, sacred as like a religious thing, but it still feels that way, and it's, mildly sacred in some way,
Mhm.
like something like that, like giving this object, this book more meaning. Well, I love that, I think that's important. That's life. That's being alive
Mhm.
is having these little trinkets, a little, again, I guess people do, maybe the religious stuff is the best example where like a little, a crucifix around your neck, St. Christopher medal, something like that, that people would, you just wear every day with maybe not even thinking about it. But if you didn't have it, you feel naked, or it's like this little tiny object that maybe isn't even valuable, it's just made out of metal or something, not even silver or gold or whatever, like jewelry, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we are the ones that instill meaning into an
Right.
object. And that's why when Owen and Johnny were exchanging gifts, like I think Owen first left his baseball cards on Johnny's doorstep, and those cards just meant a lot to Owen. And so he gave them to Johnny, and Johnny's like, he wants to do something in return. So I think he gives Owen the armadillo, leaves it on his doorstep. And then they end up like, that wouldn't mean anything to either of them if they didn't know how much each of them loved that one object
Right.
that they were giving the other.
And
It
that's,
was like sacrifice. And also with the
yeah,
baseball itself, like, I mean, without the baseball hitting his mother, Johnny probably may have never found his father. And so
right.
that's that other like going back to the purpose for everything. It's like, yeah, I mean, nothing would have happened without his mother dying.
Yeah. And that's where I think that the Dan character, the Dan Needham character, so this man that his mother meets before she dies and they date for several years, and then get married eventually, and he adopts Owen. And then, of course, like literally, like I think like almost not even a year after they get married and he's legally adopted, sorry, J Johnny, not Owen, uh, is when his mother dies. So then now, okay, now he's stuck with this stepfather guy, and but I don't know. And that scene in particular, because yeah, he gives the baseball cards and Johnny doesn't know what the fuck to do, where he's just like, why would he give me this? He loves these more than anything. Like, why do you give me these? Like, my mother's dead. And then he talks to Dan, and Dan's just like, oh, well, he wants you to give him back.
Mhm.
And he's like, what do you mean he wants him to give him back? He's like, look, he gave you something that he knows mean the world to him. Like, and he's just like, it's his way of saying sorry to you for this. Like, he doesn't know how to say it. He's 11.
Yeah.
So he's giving you this, and then he's like, so you should give him something in return. And it is kind of like maybe this is a point to ask you, like, what do we think of Dan? Because I feel like Dan is this kind of like saint-like figure throughout the novel.
Yeah, he is. And it always like, I'm always waiting for him to like slip up and do something, do
Right.
something
Yeah.
wrong, but he never does. And I
He's
mean,
oh,
even Johnny says from the beginning, like Dan Needham was like the best man, like in my life, or whatever, like the best adult I ever knew, or something like that. So you know that he's gonna be an honest, good guy, but like I was just like, yeah, yeah, Dan Needham. I don't want to say. I mean, obviously he's trying to be like the father that Johnny never really had around,
right. And
but
ends up doing that for his whole life, basically. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much.
Well, I guess he did technically legally adopt him, so he is, like his legal guardian technically once his mother died.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I was just curious about that because Dan is kind of that old wise figure in every scene he's in, where he's helping Johnny and Owen, grow up.
Mhm.
And he does it in like this way that I'm just always kind of like, man, this guy is like a saint. Like this guy is just always understanding, always helpful, always forgiving, always generous, always uh I don't know, just like the things that you expect and things everybody wants to be, but then, it's difficult to do that all the time.
Yeah. I think it also offers more clarity to like who his mother was, like her character.
Right. Yeah.
Like, she wouldn't just settle for anybody.
Right.
Like she knew who the father was and she knew why she couldn't marry him, go public with the information. But and everyone in the town wanted her, right? But she met Dan like on the train. Like he doesn't even live in the town,
Yeah.
right? He lives in a couple towns over initially. So, or maybe he got a job
Yeah, he
teaching
like
at the
they met
school.
because he was taking the train to interview for the job at the school in the town. But
Yeah.
he's like from like Boston or something. His family has money and he went to like Harvard or whatever. And everybody thought it was so strange that this like Harvard guy was coming to teach at like a boys' prep school in this small town in New Hampshire.
Hmm.
And he's described as kind of schlubby and like chubby and like not like the most attractive guy.
Hmm.
His clothes always kind of ill-fitting. And they said like so everybody was always like, "What is that beautiful woman, the most beautiful woman in our town, seeing this guy?" But like then you learn what she saw in him was that, yeah, this guy was a fucking saint, literally the best man that she probably ever met, or that Johnny ever met. Who says, Johnny says that in the novel,
Hmm.
probably that Owen ever met too,
Yeah.
besides Owen himself. And yeah, I was just like, damn, that this is having that character really does. I don't know, add something to the book here with this kind of nice guy who's always there, always helping him, even when he's in his 40s, and going back and all his other family's dead. Dan's still there, for him, offering him, hey, you want to come, you need someplace to stay, why don't you go, I can help you get hired at the school. Why don't you just teach here?
Hmm.
He's still trying to help him with his faith, his life, everything. Like, and it is like, yeah, he is the father,
Yeah.
whether he's the biological dad or not. Yeah, it is. Which, sorry, yeah, go on, dude. I don't want to.
Oh no, I was just saying like yeah, she wouldn't settle for
Right,
anyone just to be the father of her children, right? Obvious, yeah. So Dan Needham makes sense considering who the real father was. I know we can
right.
compare them later, but yeah,
And I think this is a good place to talk about, the thing that Owen always says for the novel and is a theme in the novel. Everything happens for a reason. And there's many quotes we could pull out in this, but the one I thought of when I was reading through and I wanted to talk to Erik about it was on page 105 in the chapter The Angel. It says, it made him furious when I suggested, and if this is Johnny talking about Owen, it made him furious when I suggested that anything was an accident, especially anything that had happened to him. On the subject of predestination, Owen Meany would accuse Calvin of bad faith. There were no accidents. There was a reason for that baseball, just as there was a reason for Owen being small and a reason for his voice.
yeah,
And this is where I think we do get to like the theme of miracles versus coincidences, right?
yeah,
Like, yeah, everything happening for a reason, or maybe there's randomness, and that like and I think this is a dividing line between faith too, where between like believers and non-believers, even less talked about too. I'm thinking, whenever this theme comes up, I always think of that scene in Signs, that kind of monologue that Mel Gibson does when they're like sitting by themselves on the couch and the children are asleep, and Joaquin Phoenix is asking him for comfort.
mhm,
And he, obviously Mel Gibson in that movie plays a preacher who lost his faith because after his wife died. And he just gives him that thing. He's like, it depends what type of person are you, right? Are you the type of person that thinks there are no coincidences, Uh,
mhm.
and then Joaquin, yeah, I just think of that, and because it is this ultimate dynamic in life, right? Are there coincidences or are there miracles? Are there both, How do you view this stuff? Which comes on later in the theme when he's talking to Reverend Merrill and stuff too, the guy who is like the main character who's like lost his faith. Uh, but I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about that? Like everything happening for a reason. Like Owen's basically main ethos in this novel, but I think it extends to faith too.
Oh yeah, and I mean I think that's why Johnny believes in God and is a Christian is because discovered what faith is because of all these things that happen. He realizes, especially, I mean, I don't know when he realizes it, but at least by the time that he's writing this book, that yeah, everything had to happen for a reason. Because if Owen wasn't born the way he was, we realize, oh, okay, like there is a reason for his voice. There is a reason why he's like so small. Um, it's not just a coincidence because I guess they don't really explain in the book what Owen's condition is, right? We just know that he's shorter than everyone else. I think he grows up like 5 feet is his total height at at 22.
Right.
And his voice is just this like annoying, loud, screeching. I don't know. I guess it's I don't like. I guess I imagine it in my head a certain way. I guess everyone probably does when they read it, but um, yeah, there's like a reason for all that. It's not like he doesn't have like some condition or something. It's just like he just happens to be short and his voice is this way.
Right.
No one can explain it. It's just there's a reason for that. And no, yeah, there's always like Irving always has sentences like this where it's just like lots of like foreshadowing. Um, Sometimes you don't realize it yet till the end, but you realize, oh wow, he's like kind of telling us 100 pages in what's going to happen, like at the very end of the novel, right?
And his voice being so distinct, we kind of get to that point where Johnny witnesses the miracle that he witnesses, whereas the voice is the medium for him understanding that he's seeing the miracle because that voice is so distinct. And nobody could be doing it because Owen's dead at that point. Yeah, that's very interesting too. And I mean, I guess you could get overzealous with it. Like even at a certain point, Johnny gets annoyed with Owen because of the stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not really a comforting thing to hear when your mother was just tragically killed in some way, this freak way.
Yeah.
Oh, a reason for that baseball, be like, oh yeah, fuck you. That's like the response.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to hear that, but so you could make it almost like a self-righteous thing sometimes in a certain circumstance. But then there's also like, yeah, it just comes down to coincidences versus miracles.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to that quote from the Philippians in the beginning where he's like, don't have anxiety. Like, don't worry about it. Like, there's a reason for everything. And that's kind of like what Owen is always saying. Like, no matter how bad things are, it's always like there's a reason for everything. And yeah, understandably, yeah, and Johnny gets a little frustrated at that, but eventually he sees that there is a reason for everything.
That, and I'm thinking even of that, it just made me think of that scene where Owen runs to, Johnny's mother's grave and he's like shouting to the sky, what do you want from me?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, where it's almost like a moment of lost faith, even where he's just like, what possibly could be the reason for you having me do this? I can't see the reason for why you'd have me, kill my best friend's mother accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like that's a real thing too, right? Because it feels like, oh, something like that. Oh, it's such a freak thing, such a freak occurrence. It would have to be a coincidence, but not according to Owen, not according to somebody that has such strong faith, where it would be like, actually, this set things in motion that are very important later on, or will be eventually, and having faith that they will be, because this is even before he's had any of his dreams or his visions.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's a major theme in the novel too, miracles versus coincidences.
And
I,
I mean, is it also like it makes you think like, is it a coincidence that Owen's family and eventually Owen himself, they work at they own a granite company and they make tombstones,
right.
right? It's just like, there's a reason for that. It wasn't a coincidence.
Yeah, and the tombstones become so important as he gets these visions because he keeps getting visions of that too, man. I mean, A Christmas Carol, like I mean, obviously it's directly written about in the book, but there's the themes of A Christmas Carol. I couldn't believe how much that was everywhere in this novel,
Hmm.
and just kind of I was thinking about that too because it's such a huge Americans, or not even Americans, British, right? I mean, it's just such a huge Western thing. Like A Christmas Carol, the story A Christmas Carol is synonymous with Christmas now and has been for like the last 150 years. And it's just because that story is about a miracle, right? It's about this kind of faith, finding faith,
Hmm.
not so much in the religious sense, although you could argue that that's implied, but like, because it's about faith around Christmas, like belief in doing good, and charity, in sacrifice, and you know, it's just such a heartwarming tale story.
Hmm.
So it makes sense that that became a huge part of this novel, and I was just like, damn, there's a Christmas Carol just creeping in again.
Yeah.
It's not the first book we've brought it up with either. It's on this show, yeah. So I was just like, dang,
And the other play that they put on there is like the nativity play
yeah.
with the birth of Jesus, and Owen ends up being Jesus.
Did you ever have to do that when you were growing up, like nativity stuff for
Yeah,
Christmas? Yeah,
yeah.
me
Like
too.
in I think like kindergarten, first grade,
Hmm.
like when I was really young.
I played Joseph in one of them, yeah. And I mean, that's like, yeah, it's one of those things you don't have any speaking lines most of the time. And I mean, literally, when you're little kids, too, people that aren't familiar with this, it's like a 5 minute thing during like a holiday mass or like assembly or something.
Yeah,
Uh, so you just have like little kids play the roles and they just like do it like real quick and they read the story out and then it's good fun or whatever for the kids or whatever. I remember but like I had no speaking. Yeah, I just like stood there with like this like staff,
yeah.
and
I
then like the
was.
teacher reads the miracle story, like
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, I was a wise man, one of the wise men, I think.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they got like costumes and everything. It was like a midday assembly sort of thing.
yeah. And this gets me to that thing where we're learning about Reverend Merrill, one of the pastors at the church. Where I think, and this is something that I've been really fascinated with the last several months since I've been kind of been up really longer than that, but where Owen says on page 115 when they're talking about Reverend Merrill's doubt and stuff, he just says, "Belief is not an intellectual matter," he complained. When his voice is like, "Belief is not an intellectual matter," he complained. If he's got so much doubt, he's in the wrong business. And I think that's so true.
Mhm.
And I think particularly when you get to the debate between atheism and belief, there's this pretending, like Reverend Merrill does here, that faith is an intellectual matter, that you can reason yourself into it or out of it.
Mhm.
Uh, but that's not really what it is. There's actually nothing intellectual about it. There's this kind of, it's a feeling that comes over you.
Mhm.
It's not something that you looked at facts and figures and determined, oh, okay, yeah, I'm convinced, like that's never how it's ever worked. So
Yeah.
that's interesting that this, 12-year-old boy is pointing it out about his pastor, this adult man that's giving the sermons in church,
Mhm.
because his faith is just so strong. He understands this inherently as a little boy better than this adult man who sinned and cannot forgive himself for sinning, like and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that? Like faith is not an intellectual matter.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's not. I mean, just you talked about getting in debates with atheists. It's like, yeah, you can't because it's just like we're going to have to agree to disagree on whether there's God. You either have faith, like I can't point to scientific reason why there's God.
Right.
I can't be like, this, therefore there's, you know, or that this book is correct, that Jesus was the Son of God. Like you can't, like, yeah, you can't like throw facts and figures at that.
Right.
It's a matter of like do you believe it or not? Do you have faith in it or not? And I think everyone comes around to faith in different ways. They have different experiences. But I mean, if someone just doesn't have faith, if they think all of it's bullshit, they, think we're just, clumps of meat on a spinning
Right.
rock or some bullshit, like we're just dust and nothing created us. It's some accident, you know,
Yeah.
like they can't really prove that either. But again, I guess they have faith in that. So they just want to turn their faith to something like negative and uninspiring rather than turning their faith towards something inspiring and something beneficial.
And I think that gets to it, the miracles versus coincidences too, right?
Mhm.
Where there's this like, is it just a random coincidence that life developed on this rock,
Mhm.
floating through everything? Is that just a random thing that happens all the time, or is it a rare thing? Because if it was so abundant, why haven't we found more,
Mhm.
Like all we've managed to find are like a few moons and maybe a couple planets outside the solar system that have like, bacteria growing in like pools of water,
Mhm.
and they're like, oh, that's life. Well, yeah, technically it is, but like if this is so common to be meaningless, right? Like all of our lives on this spinning rock, then why isn't it just everywhere if it's so meaningless, The kind of coincidences versus, is it a coincidence or is it a miracle that this happened?
Mhm.
That everything exploded in the right way and this rock was positioned right in the right way as it kind of, or like I mean, like this is where like this there, like you said, I mean there isn't a good explanation for that. Like Bill Maher always had this bit where he would say, like, people talk about the Big Bang Theory. He's like, and I don't really know much about it, but people that are smarter than me tell me
Mhm.
that I should believe it. He's like, but if I didn't know anything and somebody told me that, like, oh, well, there was this big explosion and then all of a sudden stars came and like, I'd be like, it kind of sounds like bullshit. Like, like kind
Yeah.
of sounds like bullshit. So it's like, is that faith, right? Because that's a theory. You can't really prove that,
Yeah.
but it's a theory, right, of the creation of the universe. And it's just like, yeah, like we're treating that as if it is just a coincidence instead of a miracle. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too technical with it, but yeah, I think that it does matter, right? Like the point of life, even.
Mhm.
I don't know, because I mean, I would say, like, yeah, like with one, well, I'd say two questions here about this too, because I think it's all tied up in this. Would we call this a coming of age novel? And would you call this a novel of faith?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's both, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think having faith is part of coming of age.
Yeah. That's
I
interesting.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
realizing. I mean, because you have to go through certain things in your life.
right.
You have to be tested in a way in order to have faith. I mean, I know a lot of people are just like, they're born, they're baptized when they're a baby, and then they just grow up in the church. But
Don't really
still,
think about it. Yeah, just, yeah.
still you start thinking about it though later on. And you start, you having your doubts and questions, and then either coming back to faith or, I mean, becoming an atheist or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, this doesn't even have to be like any specific religion. It just faith in something bigger than you, right? That's controlling our destiny.
Yeah. Or even if it isn't controlling us, just having that faith to let go and know that it will be okay in some
Mhm.
way, kind of like the way Owen talks about it when he's older towards the end of the book, going to Vietnam, where he's
Mhm.
like, I don't want to do this, but I have to trust that it will end up the way that I think it will.
Mhm.
That's the faith. Maybe that's harder to do than just praying when you need something or, like, oh, I really need this, please, like kind of it's harder to be like, well, actually, yeah, not have that anxiety, like that opening quote, and just let the Lord know of your intentions or your request, as the quote says, right?
Mhm.
i.e., kind of praying, uh, and then trust, then having that faith that it was heard, uh, in some way, or that it will be heard eventually, even if it's not right away. That's harder to do than just, yeah, like, going through the motions, like you said, being born into something and just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just what we do on Sundays, like it's a little
Yeah.
bit different. But then when you get older, you start to ask, and I think that's what Johnny does in this, right? Like he starts talking about how he converted to all these different religions after Owen Meany's death, where he was kind of bouncing around churches to Anglican to Episcopalian to, you know, all these different stuff. And I guess there's a lot of railing on Catholics in the
Yeah.
novel as well. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's just incredible to me. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a coming of age novel, and I think it's definitely a novel of faith too. And like you said, I think those intertwine a little bit more than maybe most would like to admit, even.
Mhm.
Another question I have, like, is Owen Meany a prophet figure, you think?
Yeah. I mean, I always think he's like a Christ figure in a way, and Christ was the prophet, so or he's prophetic. So yeah, I mean, he's well, he's at least a prophet for Johnny, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's there too, where he's like, he's literally swaddled in the manger during the pageant because he's like the small kid, so he's playing the baby Jesus in the manger, and just his kind of, I don't know, the way he pops up and just kind of, I mean, obviously that's intentional. He's supposed to be the symbolic kind of very kind of prophet figure, like a Jesus figure or like any of the other prophets. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of one of those things where I was like, yeah, he's definitely considered a prophet, or at least the way that Johnny talks about it in the novel. Yeah, he definitely is Johnny's prophet. And I mean, he says that in the very first sentence there, where he says that it's the reason I believe in God is Owen Meany.
Mhm.
So that almost sets him up as a prophet right there. Like,
Yeah. And
he convinced me. Yeah.
he does have an effect on everyone in the town. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone just loves him for like like no real reason. Even like, I mean, I guess he's got his own charm with people, and I mean that's seen in prophets a lot. So yeah, I mean the effect he has on people, it just seems to always cheer them up, except for the grandmother who is always very scared of his voice,
Yeah.
but loved him otherwise. She just found his voice very disturbing.
Yeah, that's interesting too, like how he kind of has this, he builds the relationship with the old grandmother too in the novel. Yeah. Eventually, as he gets older and they like watch TV together, it's like almost his grandmother now too.
Yeah.
Just like Dan and Johnny's mom were like kind of his parents too, Owen's parents too.
Mhm.
And I kept going off this dude because I mean it's all throughout the book, the coincidences versus miracles, right? When the flying Yankee train flies over or goes over the bridge when they're under it, Johnny's like, "What a coincidence," I said when the flying Yankee had gone. I meant that it was a far-fetched piece of luck that had landed us under the trestle bridge precisely at noon. But Owen smiled at me with his especially irritating combination of mild pity and mild contempt. Of course, I know now that Owen didn't believe in coincidences. Owen Meany believed that coincidence was a stupid, shallow refuge sought by stupid, shallow people who were unable to accept the fact that their lives were shaped by a terrifying and awesome design, more powerful and unstoppable than the Flying Yankee, which was the train that like went over the bridge.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean that's a prophet like figure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's no coincidence. It's just when people say coincidence, maybe they're looking for explanation. At least that's like Owen's thing.
Yeah. And explanation isn't always clear right away. And that's the big thing with this book is like you don't realize the true reason until years later.
Yeah. And this is like right at that point where I pointed that out. I think that was page like 191. This is like where we get like 200 pages of the Christmas pageant, basically,
Mhm.
and that's where like a Christmas Carol comes in because Dan's directing the Christmas Carol at the local theater
Mhm.
and all of that. And I kept thinking about Chris because Christmas Carol is it is Christmas. It's a Christian Christmas style miracle story. That's what it is. Uh, and it's so foundational to our Christmas celebrations now too that I was just like, yeah, of course this is all over the book. Of course this is all over the novel here. It's so important, especially when you're a child and you're growing up in a church like that. I mean, Christmas is like the best time in the world.
Mhm.
And I mean, maybe that's why I'm so nostalgic and love Christmas so much, because it was such a huge deal. And of course, when I was younger, you don't understand why that's a big deal, but it was like, still,
Yeah, what I really liked about the that chunk of the Christmas Carol play and the Nativity play um, was that it was just kind of a good way to like get to know the other people in the town,
right.
and it really gave a lot of like richness and character um, to everything that was going on. Really like kind of like the coziest part of the
And in
novel.
and in both circumstances, the pageant and the Christmas Carol, local production, Owen's in both, and Owen is kind of directing everyone else around him,
Mhm.
in those scenes too, where he's kind of changing things or suggesting things. He's in this at that point, he's like, yeah, 11, 12 years old, 13 or something like it just like it is this kid that just is increasing the faith of everyone around him.
And everyone listens to him too. Like
Yeah.
adults listen to him, all the other kids listen to him. Like he's able to convince all of them. They don't like he doesn't get shouted down easily. It shows his like leadership skills, which I mean,
How he's a natural leader
mhm,
despite his kind of small stature and crazy voice and stuff. Like
mhm,
he naturally and if maybe it's because of his faith that he's able to, he believes himself to be
mhm,
this type of messenger or God's instrument or God's special like a special reason for it. Therefore, it gives him the confidence despite his small stature and his other kind of issues that we don't really know why he has, but he has them to do it anyway, and it's so powerful that creates such a powerful dynamic between somebody who, you see this all the time with people, like if you're feeling bad or whatever, and then you see somebody, I don't know, somebody who is like tragically handicapped or something in like a war veteran or something. If they're really positive or something, like it affects everything around it. You're like, wow, this person like is missing their leg.
mhm.
And like they're more positive than I am, like about
Yeah.
like what am I doing wrong? Like I must be doing something wrong because I'm being ungrateful. And like I don't know, having a character like Owen in your town like that, of course it would increase everybody's faith or make them more self-conscious about their own faith. They're like, man, maybe I'm doing this in a way that isn't appropriate or I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
But this gets to the big question here, man. And this is the one that and again, this how this works. I mean, no definitive answers, just whatever we think in here. On page 364, there's this scene where there's kind of what is this scene? Let me get the context. It's when this is when Kennedy's in office and stuff, and I guess he's going back and forth here. But line on the page 364 is, "It is a wonder to me that the changing of the year had so little effect on Owen Meany. When I consider that he thought he knew at the time exactly how many years he had left, yet he appeared content to watch Ben-Hur and Hester throwing up. Maybe that's what faith is. Exactly that contentment, even facing the future." And I wanted to ask you, yeah, so what is faith, right? I mean, according to this book, according to you, yeah, however you want to answer that, like what do you think of that in terms of maybe that's what faith is, exactly that contentment, even facing the future? Or
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, what do you think about that? Yeah, in terms of is that faith, is that part of it, or is that, yeah, how would you change it? Yeah.
well, he knew when he's going to die. So I mean, you'd probably like savor every moment,
Right.
right? So even like Hester has this ritual of Hester's their cousin or Johnny's cousin. Um, and she has a ritual of like pretty much getting drunk and throwing up on the lawn every New Year's Eve. And so yeah, and Owen puts up with that for quite a bit. And then also with the reference to Ben-Hur, like Owen hated Ben-Hur. He hated like all the religious epics for some reason. Um,
They weren't like reverential enough and stuff. Like
it wasn't because they were too Christian. It was because they weren't Christian enough.
they're too
um,
Catholic. Yeah.
yeah, they were too Catholic for him. Um, but yeah, so he puts up with watching Ben-Hur with I don't know, was he watching with the grandmother or maybe it was
Grandmother and I guess I don't know. I forget the exact scene, but I think
or they go to the theater and see it or something.
they were watching TV. Like they became this tradition eventually where they would all get back together on New Year's at grandmother's house, but grandmother was like old and would fall asleep or something.
Hmm.
And they would just like hang out like Owen and Johnny and then Hester would like hang out and drink and like watch TV. But yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just thought that was so, yeah, exactly that contentment, which I think is what we're talking about, right? Like this kind of the let go of anxiety, that initial quote, it themes the whole novel.
Hmm.
Owen's not having anxiety, even though he's had this vision, seeing his exact date of death, seeing having a dream where he knows what's going to happen, or vaguely what's going to happen, if not exactly. And he's still like living as if he's a normal, teen boy or something. And he said
Yeah.
that's what faith is. And I was just struck by that. And I was just like, yeah, we definitely need to talk about this. Yeah, because it was just like it's letting go of that, just knowing that it will be okay is such a huge part of that. The faith itself.
Hmm. And it's that faith that allows him, I think, to appreciate his life more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that's why he really got along so well in the end, especially with the grandmother. And I think that's also he ends up moving in and living with Hester. They're not exactly a couple, but they sort of are, or they are. But yeah, I don't know. But that sort of Johnny was always wondering, like, why did Owen move in with Hester? Like, they don't see who knows if they even have sex. Like they get in arguments. They sometimes don't really get along as well as they would have liked, I guess. But I always felt like, oh, well, if he knows he's going to die, he's like, he's not going to get married, but he can at least live with the woman, experience some semblance of like a family in a way before he dies. And so
Yeah.
I think that's why, the decisions he was making with Hester and when before he goes to Vietnam, it's like it's because he was trying to savor every last bit of life that he had left,
Yeah.
knowing, having faith that everything, his dreams were true. The date on the gravestone of his death that he saw was true. He knew that all that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And until then,
Absolutely.
he would be safe. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about it. It's like this I mean, that's what makes it such a good topic for this novel, I think, too. It's all throughout the novel. But yeah, you know, that's hard to do. That's hard to write a good novel where there is a serious and compelling kind of wrestling with faith and doubt. Like, I mean, it's hard to make that compelling, and Irving just does it in a way that's just, yeah, by having this little prophet, like little kind of boy stand in for the most faithful in the entire town really works for that. Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
Because if this had just been some like normal teenager, it just wouldn't have been as compelling. He has to be short and something wrong with his voice. There has to be something about him.
Yeah. And speaking of Hester and all that too, one thing I was a little surprised by. I guess I shouldn't be because this was published at a time when novels were allowed to do this still. Um, how sexual it was.
Mhm.
And obviously it has to be because he's writing about adolescent boys for a lot of
Mhm.
it. So of course there's going to be an emphasis on sex and all the mother's breasts where they're like laying awake at night in the backyard, sleeping in a tent or something with a flashlight, and they're talking about like all the mothers and who has the best breasts in the town
Mhm.
and the girls in their class. And it's like, yeah, that is like little boy stuff. The kind of weird, almost incestual stuff with Hester, where Hester like kind of like gets bullied by her older brother, so she like grabs their dicks or doinks, they call them,
Yeah. Oh
and then
God, yeah,
like
when I was reading that, they use that word. God, I hate that word.
yeah, she would, but it is like maybe a little
Like,
kid in the 50s because you can't just say dick,
yeah.
I guess, and the people would be too offended. So a doink, because she's put as this like tough girl that like yeah, like when her brothers bully her, she just like grabs their doink and tries to rip it off, and they stop, because she like learned how to do that.
Well,
That,
even
but
Johnny was attracted to her.
yeah, Johnny, the
Right. So he talks
confusion,
about
yeah,
him. Like, at
the
least
con
that's her cousin, or
yeah, very confusing, yeah, especially when you're young. It is, yeah. That was something that, yeah, and you can't really put that in, at least publishing will not let you put that in there much right now. Oh, well, I should correct that. If you're a man writing this, they won't let you put it in there. If you're
yeah,
a woman writing this, you can put it in there and it can be great and accurate and
yeah.
make a great novel out of it because that's what novels need. But for some
Maybe that
reason, if you're,
interaction turned you
yeah,
gay, even better.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, but it was because that's something I noticed in this novel. Eventually, especially when they get to high school level into college, there's an emphasis on this kind of the mild sexual bullying, particularly women as kind of sexual bullies. Uh, and I wanted to ask what you thought of that because I thought this was very clever of Irving to put in there. It's when Miss Lish, that in high school when she's like talking bad about Kennedy and like Owen like loves Kennedy or something and she's talking about him having an affair and Owen gets in trouble for like making a comment to her or something. Uh, but Irving says on page 383, this is Johnny narrating. He says, at the time, neither Owen nor I were capable of putting into words the correct description of the kind of sexual bully Miss Lish was. Maybe even Randy White would have understood our animosity toward a woman who lorded her sexual sophistication over us so cruelly. Over Owen in particular. She had flirted with him. She had taunted him. She had humiliated him. Or she had tried to. What right did she have to be insulted by his rudeness to her in return? But I couldn't articulate this when I was 19 and fidgeting in the headmaster's office.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that it's Miss Lish, Hester, maybe even his mother a little bit. Now, Johnny doesn't do this in the novel, but his mother is this kind of flirtatious figure. The way she kind of with Owen particularly too
Mhm.
and stuff. I don't know, but I was just thinking about this kind of it's not really talked about the kind of sexual bullying that can take place, especially in your adolescence from older women, more experienced women, or just women in general. But I don't
Mhm.
know. I was just asking you, what did you think about that? The kind of, and it's a brief point in the novel, but I think it does kind of talk about this navigating when you're a young boy the world of sex and all of that and
Yeah, I mean, it sort of seems like, in a way, I mean, they kind of enjoyed the bullying a little bit. Like, I
yeah,
mean, like Owen's, for all his righteousness, is a little pervert, right?
yeah,
Like
of course.
telling Johnny, your mom has the best breast for like, um, yeah. And then I mean, in the play, he gets an erection, um, but looking at a girl's breasts, like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's a bit of a pervert. So I mean, but that's like, that age. Um, but yeah, no, I thought that was funny. Also, you mentioned Kennedy, and I guess this goes back to kind of Owen's righteousness in a way. So it's interesting to me that he was so fervently like he had so much faith in Kennedy.
Right.
Like, and I know a lot of people back then did. Like, I hear my parents talk about Kennedy. It's like, oh, he was just like, everyone who liked him loved him. Like, um, just and Owen seemed to have like, even though he knew Kennedy was Catholic, he's like, I don't care. That's like the only man like that I trust or something. Like he just seemed to have some fervent faith in Kennedy. And then they find out, someone tells them, I think it's like one of their friends' mothers who is, what does she do?
She's like this well-to-do, New York person divorcee. Her
Uh,
rich, bratty son goes to the same school as them, and they claim that Marilyn Monroe is having an affair with Kennedy, and Owen is obviously appalled by that. And I guess at this point it wasn't known yet when it was actually happening. It was just rumors in like the chattering class, upper classes.
mhm.
Uh, and then that's where, yeah, like Miss Lish, the is starts like insulting him, and that's when she starts talking about like Owen. She's like, "Won't you want to have sex with me, Owen?"
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of thing. Like, and there is this level. I think there is not everybody, but there is an attitude that I think some women can have about this, where there is like I think that's that term. That's why I pulled it out. The sexual bullying I thought was a great term because it is something that can probably only happen to like younger boys that like don't know
Mhm,
certain things. You're still figuring that out. So like teenagers or something. But I think there is a level of humiliation that can be used against you, and for because sex is a vulnerable thing. So when a woman can use that against you in a certain way, it is like a certain type of humiliation or bullying uh, that I guess as young boys, like you said, they didn't even know how to describe it at that age. But yeah, that's interesting.
mhm.
With Kennedy too, and then you get the politics. Like this is basically boomer politics, right? Like this
Oh yeah.
is like, yeah, this is boomer politics. So yeah, Kennedy's great, Reagan's evil, and
Mhm.
everything in between was just a accident or something, or between everything that happened in the 15 years between those two presidents is
Yeah.
you just forgotten, Nixon. Oh,
Oh
well, we
yeah.
hated
Nixon,
him, but
Nixon.
he actually was good at like really good at the job, but we hated him because he was Republican or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, but it was like boomer politics all over. So definitely like the anti-war stuff, but I mean that was very real, like the I wasn't alive for it obviously, but clearly, I mean the boomers did not want to go to Vietnam. And they're literally the reason the draft ended was because boomers were protesting uh and just not going, burning draft cards and stuff like that. So they made it kind of, it did change. It was a revolutionary time looking back. But yeah, and I guess it was the 80s. So when this book came out, I mean, technically, I guess like Bush one had just gotten in to office or something by the time this was published. When he was writing, it was still kind of the last Reagan term. I don't know. I mean, like there is this kind of, and you and I talked about this a little bit too, because I wanted to talk about like Johnny going off sexual bullying and all this, Faith. We learned that Johnny is like a 40-year-old virgin
Mhm.
at a certain point in this novel. I
Yeah.
believe the the first hint of mine was I think page 446. It's like
Mhm.
the end of a little section. It's very kind of subtle where he says, I was 21 and I was still a Joseph. I was a Joseph then, and I'm a Joseph, and I'm just a Joseph now. And I circled that and I was just like, is he saying he's a virgin? And then a few pages later, he's just like, I'm a virgin. And I'm just like, oh yeah, in 87, you're still a virgin. So you're like an adult 40-year-old, like virgin. Like
Yeah.
that was strange. Uh, but I don't know, maybe it speaks to something like Johnny's character. I was just thinking, why would he make? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
That's what I was wondering. And like, I mean, I don't want to read too much into it, but obviously he brings up the fact that he goes to the lake with his friends, like when he's in his 40s.
right.
And one of his, he overhears his friend talking to his wife, like, um, thinking that he's, what's the word they
They say
use?
non-practicing homosexual.
Yeah, he's a non-practicing homosexual. That means that he's gay. He just hasn't had gay sex or done
Right.
anything gay. But so I always kind of
which
wonder about
was more of a thing probably in that time.
yeah.
Maybe in the 80s it was starting to stop be a thing. Maybe, I don't know, it was a little before my time, but in the 90s it kind of stopped, but I don't know. I mean, gay people can put it in the comments, gay guys, let us know if you're old enough to remember this time. But yeah, there is a thing where there were this kind of like common, like almost like a celibate homosexual, and not because they were like, I don't know why. I mean, maybe it was a bunch of different reasons. Everybody has their own reasons for it, but obviously because, you couldn't be openly gay, so that was a huge part of it probably. So then you have this kind of sexual thing that happens where like you don't develop because you're too afraid to get in trouble for your own sexuality. And I get that. It's probably terrible to go through. Uh, but I don't know. Yeah, there was this thing of like kind of like yeah, like a non-practicing homosexual as the spouse says when he overhears them talking about him. Because it's like, okay, yeah, you're in your 40s, you're an adult man, you have a job, you're stable, you never bring a girlfriend around. You never bring, you don't have any wife or children. What's going on here? Are you gay? Are you a virgin? Like what? Those are the options basically. If you're that age and you're not bringing around like girlfriends or anything.
Yeah. I mean, he's a teacher at a religious school, so maybe he sort of
An all
treats it.
girls religious school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe he chose the all-girls school so he wouldn't have any temptation. Um, you know, uh, I don't want to read into anything that wasn't explicitly stated in the
Right.
book,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it just sort of seems like maybe he entered this like I'm pretty much a priest, you
Right.
know, like he is very
He's a
he's
deacon or
religious.
something in the church, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
one of those things where they for people that aren't familiar, I mean, I'm more familiar with the Catholic setup, so like but I know most churches are pretty similar if they're practicing some form of Christianity, at least, where you have like, the people that have to be seriously ordained to do that. So you have like the priests and you have bishops and you have all this other stuff, but then you have like, rectors and you have like deacons, and these are people that can get married. These are people that don't have to do you can be like an honorary deacon even at a church. You can get elected to. My grandfather was when he was still alive at the church we went to growing up, where it was just one of those things where during mass he would help with handing out the gifts and stuff and uh, events and things like that. Readings. At during the mass or whatever. You're just kind of a cantor type responsibilities. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my grandfather was in charge of the collection plate. Like they
Right.
had it on, the long stick, and they at least
Oh, right, right, right,
in
right.
his
Yeah,
church,
back in
yeah,
the
that's how they
day.
used to, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, it was that long stick. When I was growing up, it was always like these long-handled baskets,
Hmm.
and they'd like stretch them down the aisle for people like holding a 20 up. But I guess nowadays that's a little different. People aren't just carrying cash. But yeah, I don't know. But so I guess he's basically they set him up as like some type of yeah, he's involved in the church in a more serious way than just like a member of the congregation. Like he gets elected to these kind of public positions where you don't have to be an ordained minister or priest to hold it, but you still have to be a member of the congregation and they vote on, you getting in there for that position. And they usually take turns. It's not like you get this power. It's like a rotating thing where people in the community take turns, having that responsibility to the church and stuff or the community. So
Yeah.
clearly he's in that type of position. Yeah. And
But he
yeah, who
could
knows? And he kind of claims
he
that
could
he's
just like
not, but he doesn't say he's not gay. He just says like that's not me, like I'm not a non-practicing homosexual, but
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know, maybe Irving left that open for us to read in what we want, but I mean he doesn't strike me as gay. I remember he was interested in girls like in, when they were like 12 or 13, right?
Yeah, and he was
Like
getting erections when his cousins like tied him and Hester together and like forced them to kiss or whatever when they were like 10.
yeah.
He got like an
And
erection and like Hester was making fun of him again, the sexual bullying, right? Oh, you got a boner?
mhm.
Like kind of like yeah, like this kind of sexual bullying. And again, it's
That
more so for adolescents than it is for adults, but yeah.
Yeah, there was a scene like when they were 12 when I think Hester wanted to go pee in the woods. So she took off her panties like under her dress and had Owen hold them. Sexual bullying in a way, a
Yeah.
little bit. And then Owen like refused to give them back when she came out or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, of course, when you're like a 13-year-old boy and somebody like that you thought was hot gave you her panties, like, yeah, I wouldn't be giving them back either.
Yeah.
Uh, kind of,
But
yeah.
uh, yeah, no, I don't know what he was. I mean, I think maybe it's best as we just think of him as this asexual being,
Right.
like this narrative, because yeah, I don't know, like maybe the story works better that way if we don't find out if he has any sort of a romantic life at all. It's just he's, a teacher and he is a deacon at the church.
And when you think
So
about his life, where like maybe he was kind of tormented in a way. He didn't have a father. It was some big mystery that nobody knew. When he eventually learns his father is, Reverend Merrill, he, it's not like he becomes a father figure to him. Although I guess he does mention towards the end that he still talks to him occasionally and stuff. Like they're not total strangers, but that his cousin and stuff would humiliate him sexually. I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to show that this guy had kind of a messed up life that made him struggle with certain things, including his faith. And I don't know, maybe it's supposed to imply that. But yeah, I just thought that was very interesting. And especially the fact that it comes in like 500 pages in or whatever, that all, oh, by the
yeah.
way, the guy talking to you and obsessing over every news article in the New York Times is also a 40-year-old virgin.
Yeah. And that was the other thing. Like he keeps obsessing over the news, and like as every diary entry begins with, I know I shouldn't have picked up the Toronto Star today,
Yeah.
but I really tried not to, but I had to go into town and buy a copy. Like he goes out of his way to look at the newspaper, and he says he hates looking at the newspaper
He goes
because
right
of,
right to the opinion section and starts
yeah.
getting mad. Yeah.
Starts, everything about Reagan or something, or the Iran Contra, or whatever
Hmm.
was happening then. And that was the other thing. He's in Canada at this time in his 40s. And like everyone around him is like, you need to act like Canadian. You have to stop worrying about American politics. Like,
Right. Yeah.
and also being angry about the news is not Canadian. Like, we don't, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
being so stressed out about this stuff. Which, I mean, maybe goes to the fact that, there's still, he's human. So there's still going to be that lack of faith to not worry about stuff, right?
Right.
That again, that Philippians quote about anxiety. He's anxious about the news. That's what's going on in another country. That has nothing to do with him. He
And he
can't get
almost
over that.
and there's mention of almost the reason he even goes to Canada because he gets his draft deferment. You learn that he and Owen devise this plan to cut off his fingers so that he can't, he's gets a deferment because you can't go into the military if you're missing your trigger finger, basically. Uh, and then he goes to Canada anyway. Like it almost he makes it kind of seem like he was betrayed by his country in a way,
Yeah.
which is interesting because I think there's a lot of people that feel that now. I mean, maybe it's a universal, but I think, especially when you think of when this was published in the late 80s, this was the beginning of, CNN, cable news, 24-hour news coverage, Fox, CNN, the channels that are just on all the time and only do news coverage.
Mhm.
Those were just becoming a thing. And maybe this was the start of kind of constantly being obsessed with news. There were always people that were like into politics that were like news junkies, or maybe it was your job, you were a consultant or a campaign manager that had to be following the news every day. And, so you get all the papers sent to your stoop every morning and you check them out. But it was kind of a new thing for people to constantly be obsessed with the news. And I guess maybe you could say radio before that, where people would listen to the kind of 24-hour, radio or talk radio broadcasts or something and get all upset. But still, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. You and I talked about this a little bit. How, obviously, this is before smartphones, before social media, but how much it still applies to what people do every day today,
Mhm.
getting very angry about an opinion piece that was written and letting it ruin their day or their week or their vacation in that St. George's Island or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very much the current thing, right? And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, every, like he would be like, I just had to read the headline and already I'm angry. And it's like, and he keeps reading, and it's just this obsessiveness over, what's happening that's beyond his control. I mean, I think that's, I mean, I think Irving put that in the novel for a reason because it's kind of a contrast to everything that he learns, everything that he should know about, like just not worrying about what's going on. Everything's going to be okay, right? He kind of lost some of that maybe when he lost Owen Meany.
Right. Yeah. Owen
So his the
Meany.
rest of his life is like trying to get that back. And I mean, yeah, I think a lot of it is just John Irving kind of like putting himself in the novel there, like his own politics. Because he did move to Canada like in 2019.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, yeah,
He's one of
yeah,
those.
yeah. He lives in Canada. He
Yeah.
still has American citizenship, but he moved there because of Trump. Yeah,
Damn, I didn't know that. Makes sense though, because that's what I was reading when I was reading this. Was, yeah, these are definitely like boomer lib
yeah,
politics. Like,
yeah. And so I think it's definitely a little bit of him, but yeah, it also is the fact that Johnny still can't let things go. Like he's still anxious about something. And I mean,
yeah.
that's in everyone. I think everyone identifies it that, it's a constant struggle. We're never going to be perfect. We're never going to be Owen Meany. That just has this complete faith.
And maybe it's the show too that he gets so worked up over this because he doesn't have Owen to comfort him. Where like when something would happen, Owen would give him a perspective that would comfort him and ease his anxiety about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even before Owen dies, like they're talking about the Vietnam War as it's kind of slowly escalating, and everybody they know is getting drafted right out of high school. They're like slowly. Owen would always have something to say that would comfort him
Mm-hmm.
and make him be like, well, maybe I am being ridiculous about it. Uh, but then, yeah, he talks about kind of confusion where he said he met a lot of people that were anti-war, but then he met a lot of people that just did it for the aesthetics, which
Mm-hmm.
again speaks to today. And then he also met a lot of people that, you weren't getting news coverage, like soldiers that were actually very adamant, thought the war was good. That
Mm-hmm.
didn't get as much news coverage. Um, and so he was shocked when he met like a few soldiers that like thought that like this was a good thing and they were doing the right thing. Because he'd only met soldiers that thought the opposite before then. It is kind of maybe that's a sign of growing up too, that coming of age, understanding that it isn't so simple
Mm-hmm.
and there's complicated things at play here and it's all out of your control. It's not like you hold a position in office. Like he'd read those articles about Reagan or something, and it would be about like, oh well, he's clearly lying, and the American people don't care that he's lying, blah blah. And they like get all worked up. It's like, yeah, of course he's lying. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's the president. Most of them lie publicly, especially when they're doing some kind of like war, like covert ops thing. They're not going to be like, oh, well, actually, we're going into Afghanistan and having a SEAL team go blow off bin Laden's head. Like they're telling you about that after it happens, not before. So they're going to lie about
Yeah.
where that's happening beforehand. Things like that. And then, of course, that's understandable. But then, obviously, he's mad about the politics of it and like how Reagan is being stupid or something, or his advisors aren't giving him the right answer. And it's like, yeah, well, you're not a Reagan advisor. You didn't even move to DC to like try and do something about it. So yeah, you're just holding this anxiety for no reason. And maybe it's because, yeah, Owen Meany isn't here. Maybe that's why he longs for Owen Meany so much.
Yeah. And I mean, also, like Owen Meany, I mean, he kept up with the news and he had his opinions on it, but every time he read something, he would just like say a sentence like, well, Lyndon Johnson's proving he's an idiot once again, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
move on to something else. And it wouldn't like ruin his day. Whereas Johnny just like goes on for like a couple pages ranting about like, you know, how horrible Reagan is in America and yeah, kind of how things used to be.
Yeah, there was a point too when when Owen's actively in the military and he's writing back and forth to Johnny, and Johnny's like, "What does this mean? They said they're going to hit strategic targets in North Vietnam,"
Mhm.
and Owen would just send him back like one line. He's like, "It means we're going to bomb the shit out of targets in North Vietnam. Like that's literally all it means. Okay,
Yeah.
like it doesn't mean anything else. It may or may not work, but that's what's happening. It's not more complicated than that."
Mhm.
And it would
Yeah.
almost give Johnny this kind of comfort in a little way. Like he even describes it in those last 100 pages as kind of almost shockingly like he and Hester both are kind of almost like, man, what's wrong with Owen? Like he's just being so casual and about dying and about risking his life and about the war and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But it's interesting how that happens. That's something I've been obsessed with kind of because this novel isn't about Vietnam, but it kind of is.
Hmm.
It's like a backdrop to the story, which is strange because the story starts in the 50s and ends in during like the peak of Vietnam. But like yeah, it just kind of crazy how this like there's no mention of the Korean War, even though it starts in the 50s. But I guess because it wasn't as big of a cultural thing as Vietnam was.
Hmm.
There were nobody burning their draft cards over the Korean War, uh,
Yeah.
refusing to go kind of thing. But for Vietnam, for some reason, when it was the boomers' turn to get drafted, they were all like, "No way." I don't know. It's
Yeah, like that's one way that Irving kind of timestamps some of the scenes is like, it was 1961. There were only, 600 and some American troops in Vietnam or whatever. Like
right.
how the mission evolved over the years and how it changed and how many more troops were added. He keeps like, now there's, 2,000 some troops now, and you just see that escalate. So yeah, it's kind of like during that whole second half of the novel really like drives home Vietnam as being like a background. And you already know that somehow that's how Owen, like something having to do with Vietnam is how Owen dies, and it's not exact but it's close.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of those things too when you read the end of it here, it's a tender book, but then there are parts that are he talks about when they get older, he and Owen start fighting more. And it's about faith matters, but it's also about political matters. It's also about I don't know. I mean, Owen kind of protects Johnny in a way.
Hmm.
And maybe that almost stunts Johnny when he's an adult because now he's longing for like the guy that was always kind of there, that helped him not go drafted, that helped him become an English major, that helped him write his papers, taught him how to read and write well.
Hmm.
And not just that, but helped him with his faith and his life and all of that and dealing with his mother and all the things that happened to him. Because Johnny had kind of, I mean, whatever, Johnny, when you could argue, his grandmother left him money in a nice house or whatever too. So he was not like he was dire or anything, but it's still, yeah, kind of a fucked up life, like, and even more so fucked up than Owens was,
Hmm.
at least domestically, at least, but like, damn. And then when you learn that Owen's parents are kind of crazy, or you don't know if they're crazy or not, right?
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah.
When we learn how Owen was born.
Yeah. Listeners, that is great too, where and the way that they claim that he was a virgin birth.
Hmm.
And his mother has kind of always been insane, doesn't speak. So you don't quite know if she's lying or not, right?
But they believed it.
But they believe it, and
They
Owen
believed
believed
it,
it. Yeah.
but the people who were religious, like the Pastor Merrill, and who was the other one? There was another pastor there.
Wiggins.
Wiggins, yeah.
Yeah.
They refused to believe it. They thought they were crazy.
And
You know,
Father Finley was the Catholic priest in the town that Owen would talk with, but like hated Catholics,
yeah.
which
I
is
mean, so
interesting.
yeah, I was wondering, like, so what do you think? Do you think that they were crazy, or do you think he was a virgin birth? Or do you think the mother slept around on the father and just was lying the whole time?
I wonder because there's that whole thing with the church, and it's kind of vague in the novel. You don't really get an answer as to why his family was kicked out of the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
And that's partly why he rails against Catholics so much. And you wonder if there was like a Reverend Merrill thing where maybe she was messing around with one of the priests
Mhm.
and then claimed that it was a virgin birth because of the shame. Or I mean, and that's he doesn't say explicitly whether it is or not, but you're led to maybe think that, or maybe yeah, take it on faith that it's true, or I don't know.
I believe it was true. I
Yeah,
believe it was because I mean, he just point everything is like a Christ figure, so why
right.
not that? Like, I don't know. And that's the other thing. Like, do you have faith? How much do you believe
Yeah.
that, right?
Comes down to what sort of person are you?
Yeah.
Are you the person that believes that there are no miracles?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Um,
that sign scene, dude. I kept thinking about it just because that scene in that movie almost gives me chills every time I watch it. Like, because they're literally getting attacked by aliens. They don't know what's going on. The children are scared, blah, blah. And then he's asking his older brother who's lost his faith for comfort in a time where like there is no comfort, you know?
mhm.
And it just, yeah, man, that just, yeah. What type of person are you? Are you the type that believes that there are no coincidences? That there's this, you know? And then by the end of that movie, it's the same thing, right? Everything had a reason. By the end of that movie, you kind of get that, and that's what makes that reveal so good, that film. People clown on that movie, dude. That's M. Night Shyamalan's best fucking
That,
work. Like,
that's my favorite. That's my
yeah,
favorite Shyamalan, yeah, film too.
dude, yeah.
I don't like much of his stuff, but like there's like two or three I like, and that's my favorite. Yeah, I
Dude,
love that movie.
it's like his first four movies were the best shit he ever did. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, and I'd even throw The Village in there, dude. That was
Oh yeah, Village
great.
is good too. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and Joaquin in that in both was fucking great.
Mhm.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, and then after that he kind of went downhill, that's for sure. I watched his most recent that one Trapped or
Tra-
whatever.
Or yeah, with the guy in the stadium or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, with the Josh Hartnett playing like this like kill. It was so
Yeah.
bad, dude. It
There's no
was
twist at the
bad.
end.
The
Like
twist
like
is
there's
so
no
bad.
Shyamalan twist. It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't just
It's
like, what
so
this? I
bad.
could predict this.
And the fact that he like cast his daughter who clearly can't act in such a pivotal role, like it was
Mhm.
so bad. Like it was so I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, you used to be so fucking good. Like every time you put out a movie, it was awesome. And now he's just like, I liked Old. Old I thought was okay. Like it was better than like his previous stuff. And I didn't mind that one at the cabin
Uh,
uh with John Batista and or where it's like that gay couple and their kids in the cabin and then the four horsemen of the apocalypse come.
oh, that was him. Okay,
Yeah.
all
He
right.
might have
I
produced he
did.
might have produced it or I don't know.
Maybe
I mean, I know and I was just like I didn't mind that too. So he did Old and then he did that one. I was like, "Damn, M's back. M Night's back, baby. Like look at these. These are good." And then he did that trap movie. I was like, "Oh, okay. He's still like he's done. Yeah, his best stuff is behind him."
I got to see Old. That's the one I haven't seen.
It's interesting. The ending sucks. It ruins the whole thing. He kind of gets too, he writes himself into a corner, I think, and it's clear when you're watching it, it's kind of confusing towards the end. But the initial like first 40 minutes, like the thrill aspect is like classic M. Night. So fucking good. Uh, but yeah, man. I guess he just got too famous. He doesn't need the money anymore. He's got the accolades and now he's just talking about like casting his daughter and things. But yeah. All right, the practicing of the shot too. We should talk about that before we switch to the movie.
Oh yeah,
Actually, I gotta piss real quick. Let me piss real quick, and then
yeah. Go ahead.
we'll hit that and then do the movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go too.
I'll be right back. All right, yeah. So I was thinking, yeah, the shot. What do we think of the shot? Because the shot matters a lot. And like I said already, I was like a little bit bored when it started to. I mean, there's so much of this novel, like probably 100 pages dedicated to them practicing the shot in under a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
And you never really know. And listeners that haven't read this, and it's not in the movie. They don't have it in the movie. So basically, it's like a little kid style shot where where you can't quite dunk the ball, so you and your friends like hoist each other up or whatever. Where like Owen would run towards Johnny, and Johnny would like pass him the ball, and then Owen would jump, and Johnny would catch him and lift him up so he could like slam the ball in.
Mhm.
And they keep doing this throughout their entire lives, from like the age of 11 up until their 20s, essentially. And it comes back at the end there where they have to use it to save those children that Owen had his vision about.
Yeah.
And I don't know, yeah, what do we think of the shot? with the retarded janitor. Uh,
Yeah,
the retarded janitor watching him, like, and that's literally what he's called throughout the whole novel, listeners, is a retarded janitor.
yeah.
Like it's printed in there.
That's what Irving calls him. That's what Irving calls him.
Because you could still publish a novel with that in 1989. And it was just also like, come on, man, like how many public schools or like even private schools, had that janitor who was maybe not necessarily retarded, but like, maybe was never going to go to college, had some type of disability, maybe walks with a limp or something from like a war injury and just was like this kind of like quiet, nice guy janitor.
Mhm.
There's just that was always kind of a staple in a lot of schools. I remember in my high school, dude, it was these two brothers who were actually alumni of the high school too, that were like the janitors. And they were just like these kind of figures, in the school. It was like they would joke with the kids. Uh,
Were they
the,
retarded?
no, no, they
No.
weren't retarded, but I don't know. There's just it's not. It was not uncommon to have like, yeah, somebody that would work at those types of jobs in a small town. The cart boy, the bag boy would be like somebody's son who was like, yeah, maybe a little retarded or something.
Oh, even now, it's like, I mean, I don't know. I think retarded people just gravitate towards the bag boy, the grocery store
Yeah,
position.
right.
That's just, I still see a lot. There's, but I mean, yeah, in a small town, like, yeah, definitely, like, yeah, there's going to be some slower people. So,
It's
yeah,
like it's a
the
job they
janitor.
could do and like be a part of the culture in the town and the society, and everybody knew them, and that was their place, and like everybody would say hi, and yeah, it was just a thing. I don't know. So it was just kind of like almost like a small town thing because even at the funeral, right, like the retarded janitor's there
Mhm.
and he's like sobbing, like crying
Yeah.
that Owen Meany's gone. So even this retarded janitor who really couldn't speak, like they said he was kind of like on mute or something.
Mhm.
And I guess back then in like the 50s and 60s, if you had any type of disability, like if you were mute, if you were deaf, if anything like that, they would just call you retarded. So
Mhm.
maybe it's something like that, like an authentic thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
Well, yeah, I
shot.
mean, he was the one that like kind of kept the time to see if they could do it under. I think they were going for under 4 seconds or something first. See if they could, if Owen could, if Johnny could lift Owen up and Owen can dunk the ball in
Right.
under 4 seconds. And then eventually they did it under four, and then Owen's like, now we got to do it under three or whatever. So they kept trying for that, and then I think he was saying that like you could always do it faster. We could always do it faster. And I was like wondering like not only like why are you guys practicing the shot, but why do you have to get faster at it? Like even just by like tenths of a second.
Yeah.
And then yeah, in the end you find out that Johnny had to lift Owen up in order to save the children, and you had to do it quickly. So it's like, oh, okay, this there's a reason for everything. There's a reason why I had to sit through, you know, reading about them trying to make this shot. Just like there's a reason that they had to keep practicing it all the time, even
Yeah.
though Johnny was just doing it to appease Owen. Like it's something Owen wanted to do, and eventually, I think Johnny kind of got into the like competition of let's see how fast we can do it, but I mean, he had no idea why it would be important in the first place. And I mean, I guess Owen must have. I don't know.
He said he didn't quite know why Johnny was in his dream.
Hmm.
And then by the end there, when he's like his arms are blown off because he like cradled that grenade and they did the shot to like get it away from the kids. He like tells him, he's like, that's why you had to be here. They said it wasn't even discussed, it was just instinctual. Like Johnny had the kid toss the grenade to Johnny, and Johnny just like stood there, and he said it was like an instinct. He tossed it to Owen and then hoisted him up like they would with the shot like a million times throughout their entire life. And that
Yeah.
was the reason that Owen was so adamant about the shot, but they both didn't necessarily know why. Owen just knew there was a reason he was compelled to like practice the shot and keep doing it faster.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, at a certain point, and Johnny kind of gets pissed off when they're like 18, and they're doing it, and Johnny's just like, yeah, well, I'm doing this for you. Like it's not like Johnny was getting to dunk the ball. He was just like doing what Owen wanted.
Mhm.
So it's not like they were like taking turns dunking either. It was always Johnny, like always seen up Owen. Like yeah. So yeah, there's that. But that was just one of those things too, where yeah, there was a reason for everything that happened in the novel, and then as like Eric said, those last 50 pages were just you fly through because it's all coming and like culminating in those last 50 pages. Everything that happened was Owen was right. It was all for a reason.
Yeah, and like the dream he had. So Owen's dream was that he would die in Vietnam, and somehow Johnny was there. I
Yeah,
mean, but it turns out that like, I mean, because that's what was like just made this thing a page turner is like they're not in Vietnam. They're in some airport in Arizona. Owen has a job where he's escorting bodies,
yeah,
the dead bodies back home. And he has like a layover for a while in Arizona. So he invites Johnny to fly out. And he knows that he needed him to fly out because he knows that that death date is coming and Johnny needs to be there.
yeah,
Even though Owen's confused, he's like, I'm not in Vietnam. Like, why? Like, what's supposed to happen? And I mean, the reader's confused also. And like, just getting up to the end. And one of the lines I remember, like, before he kind of starts describing his journey to the airport where Owen's eventually killed, um, Johnny says, "What isn't like what disturbs me most isn't that Owen Meany died, but how he died." And I was like, "Okay, have to find this out."
yeah. And that's like maybe 100 pages from the end. He's like hinting that, and then he starts telling you about where Hester ended up, like right after. And you're like, come on,
Yeah, she
and
became some like yeah,
like
80s.
Pat Benatar
Yeah, I
stuff.
was just gonna say Pat Benatar. The way they described her, like yeah, Pat Benatar.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, yeah. It's the vibe I got, kind of Hester the molester.
Yeah, that's
Hester the molester. And everything
um,
was a reason. Yeah, Owen worked for with graves and gravestones because he was getting prepared for that job where he had to work with families of dead, soldiers as the bodies were shipped back and they hand them the folded American flag,
yeah.
And I think there's ways that you could be cynical about that when like, yeah, your loved one dies in the war fighting for their country and then you're handed a folded American flag.
Mhm.
So you can be cynical about that, but that's not the type of book this is.
Yeah.
Where like it's actually taken very seriously, and Owen is very serious about that American flag means something, the
Mhm.
special purposes, of these things. Yeah, I remember my grandfather was a veteran in the Korean War, so when he died, because he was a veteran, we had the full military honors,
Mhm.
even though he hadn't been in the military, for 60 years or something. Uh, so that we still have the flag. It's like folded, in a frame that they gave us because then you get full military honors, even though he didn't die in war, he died of old age
Mhm.
later, but you still get those honors and the guns, the 21 gun salute at the funeral and stuff. Yeah, I mean that matters, I think too. Like all of that. Yeah, everything mattered. Everything happened for a reason. Where it kind of leaves you maybe in the end of this book that yeah, maybe that you leave in a place where Owen was right about everything. That these things all had special purposes, that everything happened for a reason, that there are no coincidences,
Yeah.
that there are none.
Yeah. What did you think about um, Irving's depiction of, I guess, the family um, that was, I guess, receiving their son's body
At the
at the
end,
end?
yeah.
Yeah. He depicts them as pretty just white trash,
Yeah,
like
basically, yeah.
pregnant. daughter, like a stepdad that like wasn't the father to any of them, or a mother that wasn't the mother to any of them. I don't know. It was
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
crazy like yeah, it was just kind of in my idea, like, oh, of course, this is John Irving's idea of these are the people who love war, right? The rural,
Yeah.
like white
Right.
trash trailer park Americans. So he paints them very stereotypically, which was a bit lazy, but also I think that's genuinely how he feels.
Yeah, definitely the boomer lib politics are all over that. Yeah, that and you ever seen that movie The Messenger with Woody
Uh,
Harrelson?
uh,
It's where Woody Harrelson plays this kind of grizzled military major or something, but his job is now that he's like injured and can't be in combat, he trains these young soldiers that have to go around to the loved one's house and inform them that their son is dead or their
oh
daughter is
yes,
dead.
yeah, I did see that.
Dude, and that movie's not very good, but the first 20 minutes is so heart-wrenching because it opens up on a scene where he's like knocking on a door to
Mhm.
tell them that like they're dead, and like the woman just starts crying as soon as she sees like two uniformed guys standing at the door because she knows.
Yeah.
And it's just, oh my God, it was so hard to watch like that first 20 minutes. And I was just thinking, yeah, like the reaction to loved ones dying in some way is always interesting how that's depicted. And maybe in that scenario where you're standing at like a small airport and their big cargo container taking the body,
Mhm.
and maybe it's deformed so that you can't even look at it because you don't want to, it's in the closed casket with the flag draped over it.
Mhm.
And I don't know, yeah. Almost kind of a surprising reaction from the family. Maybe that was Irving's way of doing that too. I don't know.
I mean, I guess like part of it maybe he had this character of so like one of the family's youngest son um has like a belt with a bunch of like knives and machetes and stuff on it. Like,
Yeah, like surplus military stuff you could get at like a store or like
yeah, it was making me long for the time when you can bring a machete into an airport, you know?
yeah.
Those are
I remember my friends and I
totally
like
similar.
there's like a point in every little boy's life where they're obsessed with like military regalia and stuff. And I remember you could go to like those, yeah, like those like surplus stores that sell like military surplus stuff. I don't even know if they still exist anymore.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
some out there. Yeah.
yeah, but like yeah, you could get cool tactical knives or like tactical belts and stuff. And my friends and I we'd like wear like military tactical belts to school or whatever. And be like, "Oh, yeah, look at that. That's cool. Like
Yeah.
this what they give the soldiers. I mean, we didn't have like weapons on it or anything in the 90s, but like it was just like an empty belt. And you're like, "Oh yeah, cool." Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know, shit like that. But it's also good. How the fuck did this guy get a live grenade? But yeah, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I know he has he like he just like so like yeah, so John Irving he has to have that character, so I guess maybe he's like, okay, I'll just make them all like trash survivalist type people, you know.
And maybe it's telling too, where it's like most violence that happens in a catastrophic way like that, like a terrorist attack type style. Not that
Mhm.
that was even a terrorist attack, but you could call it that. That's what the news would call it now. If some, you know, angry teen threw a grenade into an airport, it would be called a terrorist attack. And it would be.
Mhm.
Uh, but I don't know that like idea that to protest, I don't know, like causing problems or something, like they don't know what else to do except to just like be angry and it's just like senseless violence. Most huge violence stuff is senseless in a lot of ways. Like, why would this teenage boy throw a live grenade to these like soldiers that he just met that were bringing his dead brother's body back from this foreign country?
Well, I think it was aimed at the Vietnamese children.
Oh, right. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think he
yeah.
was like, "You're bringing those Vietnamese over here. We're supposed to be fighting that.
Oh, right.
Just kind
Yeah.
of an ignorant, you know.
Right, right,
I
right.
guess that's why they also had to be white trash, so they're uneducated and don't know that, like, yeah. So those these nuns were coming out of the airport. And that's another funny thing because Owen hated Catholics and he had to help these nuns. And he was just very gracious in doing it. And there is one thing he said that kind of like maybe foretold the scene a little bit was he was talking about funeral services and the difference between like the Baptist service and the, other Protestant services. And he was saying that, the Catholics do it best.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are like most reverential. Catholics do it best. He's like, I gotta hand it to him there. And it's kind of like you kind of I think Johnny wonders like, oh, Owen has been kind of growing soft on the Catholics lately. And it's like these nuns come out and it's like, I don't know, there's some sort of fate there. So the
Yeah.
nuns are guiding these, I guess, refugee children to the bathroom, and Owen and Johnny escort them in there. And this was another thing, like, Johnny spends a lot of time describing the restroom, like when he landed in the airport initially, like the previous day. And I'm like, it's like a two-page description of every nook and cranny in this
Right.
bathroom. And I'm like, why is he describing this so much? And yeah, it turns out like yeah, that's the place where um Owen dies.
And then in the arms of a nun too. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's it's yeah, it's very ironic, but also like yeah, just kind of fitting.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I guess the guy comes in, throws a grenade at the Vietnamese kids, and Owen pretty much so like Johnny lifts him up to the window so he can jump on the grenade.
Yeah, they make it sound
Is that
like
right?
Johnny's lifting him up to the window and then Owen is like pushing the grenade up against the window with both hands
Yeah.
to like prevent it, so have like the bulk of the shrapnel go out the window instead of, and of course into Owen because his hands are there.
Yeah.
So the bulk of it wouldn't hit anybody else. It would just go out the window, basically, the bulk of the explosion.
Yeah, and the way they describe like, and I was just surprised, like they just said his arms were blown off. Like that's kind of the
Right.
extent of his injuries.
Grenades are finicky things like that too, I think, because they're obviously they're very, have a lot of damage, but it's a small radius for
Hmm.
them. So that's why it is kind of crazy where like you would hear these war stories, especially in like Vietnam, of guys like holding a grenade like too long or something and their hand is just blown off. It doesn't
Yeah.
kill them, but it just blows off. Like, their hand from like the elbow down to the wrist or whatever is just gone
Yeah.
because it like has a few feet of radius, but not like a huge amount. I mean, obviously that depends on the size, and I don't know enough about military stuff to know. I'm sure there's grenades now that are much larger radiuses, and then talk about mines and stuff in the ground, which are huge radiuses, but I don't know. Yeah, that is crazy how that happens. But yeah, I mean, a brutal, brutal way to die if you bleed to death because both your arms were blown off.
Yeah.
You would see a
Yeah.
lot of this in the Iraq War, right? That was like that was what was killing most of the soldiers in Iraq when we first went there and stuff, was that these kind of, homemade bombs that were like hidden places and people would get like all their limbs blown off but still be alive.
Mhm.
There was like a couple stories like that of people that came out of those types of war zones. It's just really brutal. Oh my God, yeah. Having your arms blown off, like Jesus Christ. Insane, dude.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk Simon Birch. The fucking Simon Birch, which isn't as brutal as that, but
No.
all right, so Simon Birch is the movie they made out of this in 1998. And supposedly, and you and I were texting about this a little bit, like Irving didn't like it and requested that they change the name to something like Simon Birch. And then he requested that they not put in the credits that it was based on
Mhm.
A Prayer for Owen Meany, but put it was suggested by A Prayer for Owen Meany. So I would say Irving must have had a great agent by that point to be able to have that kind of command over
Right.
over the film, and what they called it and what they credited and how they credited it, because that's unusual. usually you don't get a say in that as a writer. If you sell the rights to get a movie made, you get a nice check, but you usually don't have much say, depending. Some people do, some people don't.
And
Like
they
I know,
changed all the names too.
yeah,
Like every single name, every character is a different name.
yeah. So Owen is Simon Birch, Johnny is Joe Wentworth or something like
Hmm.
that. It's not New Hampshire, it's Maine.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, yeah, that all those little things are changing. Yeah, instead of Dan, it's Ben
Yeah.
for Dan. Although I really love Oliver Platt as Dan or Ben in that. Uh,
Yeah, he was perfect. I think they got like, I mean, aside from the character of Simon Birch, I think they got like the casting pretty right as far as like how I can imagine those characters.
Jim Carrey, dude.
Oh yeah, he's
I forgot he was even in it. And he's like the narrator too. Like I was like,
Mhm.
holy shit, this must have been before. I mean, was this before Ace Ventura? No, right?
No,
Like this
no,
was
it was
after.
after Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, Cable Guy. It was yeah, it was after all those. I
Damn.
think he just wanted to do like I don't know, maybe they were just offering him a ton of money to do this, and he's like, okay, I'll like on the
Right.
set for like a day, and or maybe he wanted to do a serious movie.
And honestly, I don't mind Carrey in serious roles. I think he's a good enough actor that he can play serious roles.
Mhm.
Like Eternal Sunshine, even,
Yeah.
like I think he can play a straight character, but he's just so known as the kind of crazy comedy guy.
Mhm.
But I think he's like he's not as good as like Robin Williams or somebody, but I think he definitely has the range of somebody like that where he could do like a silly crazy comedy role like Sonic or something like he's doing now.
Mhm.
Or he could do like, yeah, like a Good Will Hunting, like Oscar nominated worthy serious role,
Mhm.
but he's not really getting cast in that. Maybe he doesn't want to. Yeah.
He did Man on the Moon, which I don't know.
That,
Again, he
yeah.
was playing a comedian, so it was kind of funny, but also more serious.
That and he was really weird with that too. I remember when that was being filmed, he was doing very strange stuff, and he claims to this day, Jim Carrey, that he was possessed by Andy Kaufman during the making of that movie. That's what he claims. Like literally today, like interviewers ask him, he claims that Andy Kaufman possessed him and something came over him when he made that movie and stayed in character the entire filming process to the point where like people were angry, like pissed off at him.
Yeah, there's some documentary made about
Yeah,
that.
a few
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah, and Jim Carrey's still like 20 years later saying that like he was possessed by Andy Kaufman during that and like it's all a blur. I was like, holy
Yeah.
shit.
But yeah, so yeah, I think he's crazy enough. Like
He's a
he's
little
odd
out
enough
there. Yeah, he's
to where he
woo-woo.
can like get into the serious role
Yeah.
if he wants to go there.
But that's
But I
cool.
mean,
Yeah.
he didn't have much to do in the movie other than just stand at the grave, kind of and kneel
Right.
down. So yeah, it was like an odd cameo almost.
Yeah. Written for the screen and directed by this guy named Mark Steven Johnson. Have
Never
you?
heard.
I'd never heard of that guy either.
No.
And I didn't look up the IMDb or anything to see what else he'd done, but I was just like, I'd never heard of this guy. But apparently he's the credited screenwriter and then also the director as well. But like, yeah. So I was thinking of that. So all this is different. And you and I were texting about this when we were watching the movie because we almost watched it completely synchronizing. We were like an hour off from one another. We were texting about it, watching this movie the night before this. And I was thinking something along the lines of like this type of movie, like you said this when we were texting was it's like they just took the first two chapters of the novel
Hmm.
and like used that as like the main source material and kind of cut everything else out and then kind of changed the ending and made it smaller scale. So the scale of the story is really, really turned down, where you're only with these boys for like a few years, like from age
Hmm.
like 12, basically, like in their life for like a year or something.
Yeah, Simon dies at 12
Yeah.
in the movie. Yeah, it was like, yeah, it would just seem to focus on that, yeah, first two chapters, two and a half, there's something about they throw um, is it the Nativity play? Yeah, they throw the
Yeah.
Nativity play in there, not a Christmas Carol, but yeah, and other than that, they changed the ending. It's like if Wizard of Oz were only about Dorothy trying to find her dog, like
Yeah.
just that plot, and there's no, there's nothing else. It's like they just cut out a huge chunk, which, looking at the film, like if I really forget about the book, the film's fine.
Right.
It's enjoyable. It's a good family film. But when I look at the book, I'm like, oh man, they just like sucked out every ounce of like faith and
The faith and doubt themes, the miracle
yeah.
versus coincidences themes, which are huge, in the no are a huge part of the story, at least in the novel. Yeah.
And they mention them, like they mention faith like two or three times in the movie, but it's not this huge theme or anything. And I don't
Yeah.
even know when they're talking about it. Like it doesn't seem like Simon is that religious at all. I don't know. They don't show anything to convince me of that. It just seems like they kind of drop it in and don't mention it again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just it kind of it lacks that. And so the person that they cast as Simon, and like, I get it's modern days, so of course he has some sort of like they mention it in the movie, like some sort of deformity, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then he's got a hearing aid also, and his voice, uh, he doesn't really have like a super annoying voice,
Yeah,
right?
like
Not
not
how I
like the
imagine.
nails on a chalkboard and stuff, like it's kind of described in the novel. It's more
Yeah,
so just like a little kid's voice.
yeah,
Maybe a little mousier because that kid is kind of, yeah, like birth defects or whatever. The actor itself that like plays that, which when I was looking it up too, I kind of obviously like the kid who played Simon Birch is no, that was the only thing he acted in really. And I think he's
yeah.
like a computer programmer now, like doesn't do anything in Hollywood, but is obviously remembered for playing that role. But yeah, I was interested in rewatching it because I hadn't seen it in so long and I wasn't quite sure if it held up as well as it did when I watched it as a kid. I don't know, like when I got maybe because I had just read the novel too and how emotionally impactful that novel was on me. And then seeing the movie, it feel like it almost missed the mark a little bit
Hmm.
with that real heavy hitting, like emotional, you know, thing you get when you're reading through this and all the doubt and all the kind of the visions and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it almost missed the mark. I don't know. Yeah, what did you think about that in terms of how it just adapted the material?
I mean, the whole thing in the book was that like Owen knows when he's going to die,
Right.
right? And there's none of that um in the movie. Like he doesn't see his death. All they do is they say like Owen believes that he's gonna be a hero one day. That's it.
Yeah.
Not that he's gonna die being a hero or anything like that. It's just he believes he's gonna be a hero. And they don't even like they only reiterate that like once or twice.
Yeah, and he keeps referring
It's,
to himself as like God's instrument, but it's
mhm.
but it's him referring to himself, so you don't get the kind of whatever, there's obviously things that don't translate to the screen. So to be fair to somebody who is like a screenwriter tasked with adapting this would be a challenging story to adapt to the screen in like a 2 hour runtime.
Yeah.
Maybe if you had like, yeah, like a 10-hour series or something, like a mini series, you could get it all in with all like the nuances and the characters, the priests and stuff in their own doubt and Owen's conversations with them and stuff. But I guess you just have to take liberties. And the real tragedy is that Owen dies and that the mother dies and this friendship, like the kind of friendship between the two boys
Mhm.
is really powerful. I mean, in the novel too, and I think they tried. It makes sense as like thinking of it as like a writing perspective that I might try to do something similar where like, okay, what is really matters about this story? Well, it's the friendship, it's the kind of miracles thing, and of course, it's the tragedy of Owen dying and then the mother dying. So I'm sympathetic to a screenwriter that's trying to like, okay, how the hell do you adapt this novel that's like this huge, philosophical kind of faith-based coming of age story. I think people, I mean, maybe I'm just talking about this from writing perspective. I think people underestimate how difficult it is to write like a coming of age story, like a good one, like
Yeah.
because there's so much that goes into it. You can point to the big classics that everybody knows, but I even think like, To Kill a Mockingbird and stuff is technically a coming of age story. And like, man, it's so hard to get that right, like to really have like an emotional impact on that.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, events tied through history usually. And I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's difficult without being like, like it's something that's been done before,
Right. Yeah.
because so many like instances, that, like, they've already been written about or done a certain way. So you have to find like a good plot to surround it, like East of Eden or something like that.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought of when I was watching this was child actors, a huge cast of child actors in this.
Mm.
And it struck me as I was watching this. So I'm watching a movie from 1998 that I hadn't seen in, like 17 years. And, I'm somebody, and Eric's somebody that likes art and movies and film and stuff. So we keep up with it. So we watch the current day stuff that's happening. I was just thinking like the difference in child actors. Man, the child actors were so much better back then. Like I was thinking particularly the guy that plays the Johnny character,
Mhm.
Joe in the movie. Like he has to carry a lot of weight, especially like his emotional reactions. And I'm like, this kid's probably like 12 years old acting right now, and he has to do this dramatic sobbing scene over like Simon Birch's dead body. And I was just like, man, this like 12-year-old boy is crushing this. Like he is crushing this character right now as an actor. And I'm thinking of like, yeah, then you watch like Stranger Things and you're supposed to like you're seeing those children actors like pretend to cry. You're like, yeah, these actors, something happened, dude. Like there's a difference between like the 90s child actors and now. And I'm
No, I mean,
thinking even like 90s movies that we grew up with, Sandlot, Rookie of the Year, Little
yeah,
Rascals, these kind of big, heavy, mostly child actor casts. And they were great. They carried the whole thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I just noticed that. Did you notice anything like that? I was like, damn, these
oh
child
yeah.
actors seem like they used to be a lot better than they are now. Like,
So I think that kid that played him was like Joseph Mazzello or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
He was in some other things at the time, like a
Yes.
Kevin Costner movie called The Cure, but he was in a few other ones. But so he acted against like real actors that I mean, it's
Right.
Kevin Costner, so you have to carry your weight. But
Even
like
like
whether
Harry Potter, like there's like the first like couple of Harry Potter movies with, I mean, they're not great actors. Like, I mean, the people that played those kids, but I was just thinking like, yeah, like they were working and they still talk about this in interviews and stuff, the people that played, Harry and Hermione and Ron or whatever, they talk about like, yeah, like, wow, like I was like 8 years old and Alan Rickman was standing across from me, like
Mhm.
giving me
Yeah.
advice on how, like, you shouldn't do this. He's like, do this instead,
Mhm.
as if like, yeah, 9 years old getting advice from this like Shakespearean trained actor from like England.
Yeah.
It's
And I
just,
mean,
yeah,
they're just like I remember like you used to know the names of child actors like Brad
yes.
Renfro, Edward
Corey
Furlong.
Feldman,
Yeah,
yeah,
like yeah, both
John
Corys.
Ashton and,
And
and
but yeah, I just you don't really know the names of child like yeah, Harry Potter's are like they're not kids anymore, but it's like the last one. I guess Stranger Things. I guess I don't know their names. I just know
me
like the
neither. Yeah.
number 11 girl or whatever.
Right. I
I
do
guess
know
I'd
her,
recognize.
Millie Bobby Brown, I think is her
Okay.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just yeah, there's not much anymore. But
And I remember that the tall, skinny kid, he was in like the Ghostbusters reboot, right? From Stranger Things. He was like the skinny kid with the longer hair.
I don't think I saw the sequel.
They're
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, they're terrible. But he's a terrible actor and he just keeps getting cast. And so I was like, Jesus, this kid would never get cast in a movie like Simon Birch in the 90s. He was just not good enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I was a little skeptical because I'd forgotten a lot about the movie, but there were scenes that I still remember to this day that I knew were coming. Like I remember the scene of him like being obsessed with the boobs in the manger when he's
Oh
doing the
yeah.
play. Because I mean, when I first saw this, I was like a 10-year-old boy, and I was like, that's what I was thinking too. And like, yeah, so there's that. And then like the scenes of the mother dying, and then like the baseball, I remember that distinctly too. And the Reverend, that actor who played the Reverend is really good.
David Stratton.
Yeah, and he's one of those actors that always just like pops up and like gives a great performance that is never the star, but like
Mhm.
always would give, especially in the 90s, he would show up in these movies and just give a great performance for like 20 minutes and then like be gone. And it's just, yeah, thinking of like League of Their Own, he's like in that briefly, you know,
Yeah.
all of
No,
these great 90s movies. Yeah.
he was perfectly cast as the Reverend Merrill. Um, and that's one thing I guess we didn't discuss was so in the book, Johnny finds out that the Reverend Merrill is his father, and he finds that out because he opens a drawer and he finds a baseball that killed his mother, which no one knew. Like everyone was searching for the baseball. It was this whole
Everyone
thing,
thought
like,
Owen had it. Yeah.
yeah, like oh, like who would take the baseball? And I guess she was waving to someone, and they thought like maybe that was someone was his father. He kept trying to piece it together, but he eventually finds out because of the baseball that it was Reverend Merrill.
And even that
And
happened for a reason, right? His mother turned away from the game and waved to Reverend Merrill for a reason.
yeah, and without the baseball hitting her, he would never find out who his father was
Right.
because he probably would never tell him. She never
Yeah.
told anyone.
Yeah.
Um, and going back just to her character, if she knew, like, she could tell everyone and, maybe force him to marry her, but she's was like, no, I'm not going to ruin his life like that. Like, I'm just going to, you know, keep this to myself.
Yeah, like a quiet dignity to it,
Yeah.
despite it being such an indecent thing or whatever by certain standards. It's his mother was had more dignity than the priest did.
Yeah.
And the priest obviously felt guilty for it. And you learn all about all that in the last, like, yeah, 50 pages. But then, even more importantly, in the novel, that's the miracle that, at least the first miracle, that Johnny witnesses on behalf of Owen Meany after he's dead is he hears Owen's voice in that office, and then the drawer gets pulled open,
Mhm.
and he believes that it was Owen Meany that did it. And like, that was like the first miracle he witnessed regarding Owen Meany. And that's, kind of hinted that that's his part of why he, I believe in Mooney because of Owen. I believe in God because of Owen Meany. Owen Meany's the reason I'm a Christian, that very first sentence that we talked about. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, everything for a reason, which is so good. I mean, so good in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the movie misses that a little bit. Like there's not enough on this is all for a reason. A little bit of it, but it's mostly coming from Simon, the
Yeah.
character.
And that's so the scene in the movie where he finds the baseball, I was just a little confused. So he knew that was the baseball that killed his mom.
They change it in the movie where they add this detail that the word Tigers was written on the baseball because
Mhm.
that was like their little league team name or something. And so they changed it in the movie to that's how, and it's Simon Birch that finds the ball in the movie. So they change it to he knows that's the baseball because Tigers is written on it or something.
But he doesn't dawn on him that the Reverend Merrill is his father,
Yeah.
right?
Where I guess Owen knew, or in the movie they at least make it so that he finds out because he goes to the pastor for something else Johnny does in the movie or Joe in the movie does. And the pastor starts confessing to him, and then Owen shows up who was going to tell him
Oh,
kind of they kind of smash it all together into the movie in the movie version. At least
yeah.
that's how yeah.
It was so like I don't know. It just wasn't done gracefully,
Yeah,
like
it was
as it
kind of
was in the
smashed in there
book.
at the end. Like, oh, we have to include this, but
Yeah.
it could have been a little bit more like if I were the writer, I might have done something like Reverend Merrill is like holding the baseball when he like walks into his office or something
Hmm.
and like finally confesses to Johnny and then maybe I don't know, but then how do you do that and move it along? Yeah, so there's things like that. But there were things where I noticed there were a few scenes because this is one of those movies. There was this like a genre of movie in the 90s. And I know you probably remember this, where it was kind of like a feel-good family movie.
Hmm.
And I think this kind of falls into it, or even like a tearjerker family movie. I'm thinking if you remember that movie, like The Secret of Ronin-ish.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like that. There were these kind of like in the 90s, there were just a bunch of movies like this always coming out that were usually pretty good, you know.
Hmm.
Even something like if Sandlot or something I would say is like that,
Yeah.
these kind of feel-good family movies, usually based in the 60s or something, like uh but I don't know. So I say this definitely falls into that kind of genre. But I don't know, there were still some scenes where I was just kind of shocked at how powerful it was to see on screen. Like I was thinking of the scene, and this isn't in the novel. It's like a liberty the screen takes. Owen does it in a different way in the novel, but after the mother is killed during that freak accident at the baseball game, there's like this, or as Owen would say, like an act of God, like a reason for it. It's
Mhm.
like when he's like that little kid and he's in his baseball uniform and he runs, they show it's like a very brief scene of like a cut scene where Owen runs off to the dock by himself and he's carrying his baseball cards and he's in his baseball uniform and he's just shouting to the sky in like his little like, deformed voice, "I'm sorry," like shouting it out. And I just started like immediately like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
and I was just shocked at how powerful that was for this like 2 second scene that happens before you cut to something else. I was like, damn, like they just don't make movies like that anymore, where like you get this really powerful scene, very little dialogue, just this visual scene of him shouting into this open void, around the lake or whatever
Hmm.
on the dock with nobody else around him, and he's just so sorry for what he did. Like, I mean, yeah, just incredible stuff.
They really did do the whole like um accident at the baseball game scene really well. They pretty much stuck to the book by that one, even with the coach covering his eyes.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, Ashley Judd was the mom, and she's just perfect as like that 50s beauty. Like, yeah,
That was
yes.
another thing in those 90s movies. It usually involved Ashley Judd in some like mother position, like hot mom role.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it usually had her cast in it in those like 90s movies.
Mhm.
Yeah. Her or who was the woman that played Forrest Gump's mother? I forget her name.
Sally Field.
Sally Field. Yeah, it was like her
Yeah.
cast as somebody's mom in like
Mhm.
those feel good 90s movies. Like
Yeah.
it was like those two women were just like cast in everything as like the mom in these like feel good family 90s films.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's great. Yeah, that scene was done really well. And yeah, uh, Owen, yeah, screaming to the sky. It's yeah, rather than
I was tearing up. Yeah.
yeah,
Just
that was
that
really good.
emotional, because I mean, for me, it's always like, yeah, there's that empathetic quality where like, you put your, how do you deal with something like that? Like he probably is filled with so much guilt and they show it already and he doesn't know what to do, but he believes that it maybe happened for a reason. And yeah, I mean, he literally like took the only family that his best friend had. Like, oh my God, what a conundrum. Like what a dramatic, that Shakespearean level tragedy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And this
Yeah.
poor boy, like, yeah,
They
already
did a good
getting,
job developing the relationship between those, at least between, Joe and Simon in the movie.
yeah, because at its heart, because that's what I was thinking too. Like, I was like, really at its heart, this story is a story about miracles, but it's also a story about friendship.
Yeah, it's a buddy movie. Like it's, it is coming of age in a way, even though you only see it's really like a year. It's not exactly coming of age, but it's definitely like a feel good like movie about friendship.
in the film version, it does spend. I see why they did it too, because they really wanted to emphasize that death scene of the mother, which is important, the way
Mhm.
they do the story. But that's why they spend like the first 40 minutes of the film just showing you these young boys being young boys in the 50s. Or I guess they even said it in the 60s in the movie, don't they?
Mhm.
They say it's like 64 instead of 54.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's early 60s.
Yeah. That so you just like see this friendship, yeah, little boys camping in their backyard together, dirty jokes, talking about who has the best tits or whatever in their
Mhm.
class, and like normal little boy bonding stuff. And then you get the tragedy like 40 minutes later where you're like, oh wow, the relationship is established and they really, man, yeah, that was rough. The ending, I remember being really sad at the ending when I first saw it as a kid. Was
Mhm.
not as sad this time. I don't know if it was because I was watching it like later than I planned to, and I was like a little tired and like wasn't ready to have that. There was still sadness, obviously. I wasn't like, oh, this wasn't sad at all. Of course it was sad. And like I said, that actor, that Joe actor is fantastic in that ending scene where he's like sobbing over the body.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I don't know. What do we think about him changing the kind of miracle at the end? How do we feel about that with the movie changing the miracle that happened? He's still saving kids, technically.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I think it worked in context, and I guess like it tried to follow through on what some of the book tried to do.
right.
Um, I mean, yeah, it's a family movie. Like you're not going to have him grow up and like, get blown up by a grenade. You know what I mean? You're going to have him die by like saving children from drowning on a school bus.
Right.
It's, um, yeah, he's still a hero. He died a hero. It still kind of gets that same message. So I didn't really mind it. I thought it was a really good ending.
And they still emphasize the voice, the size, the kind of
Mhm.
like, oh, children listen to me because of my size and my voice.
Yeah. Whereas
Uh,
in
he
the
could
book,
fit through the window because of his size.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the book, it was his voice helped him calm down the Vietnamese children um, when the guy came in with the grenades, and I guess like he could repeat the like Doom song or whatever.
Doom sa, children, doom sa.
He could repeat that in a way that sounds like authoritative and authentic, so they listen to him. And yeah, that was like that's the reason for the voice. That one moment right there is the reason why he went his entire life with that voice.
Yeah, with like a
And
non-changing voice.
mhm,
He was stuck with like a little boy's voice even after puberty.
yeah,
And they even take time to explain all that, going to see the singing instructor and stuff. Yeah, like in the novel. That too, we didn't even touch on the capital letters with everything. The Owen in the novel, every time he speaks or writes something, it is depicted in bold capital letters.
yeah,
And I was thinking about it. I didn't like it at first when I read like the first chapter, I was like, what? This is kind of off-putting. But then you kind of get used to it and settle in. And
mhm,
I was thinking, Irving was probably doing it because it makes everything Owen says more important and stand out more. Like even if
mhm,
you just picked up this book at a bookstore, listeners, and just thumbed through it, like you would see these big, bold, all caps sections in the middle of a paragraph or something throughout the whole book. And it does make draw your attention right away. And I guess he's trying to emphasize the voice, but I think he's also trying to emphasize the presence. Like Owen Meany had this presence
mhm.
that everybody just commanded everybody to listen to him, even though it was kind of this screeching voice that threw people off, and they looked at him through shock, like it commanded attention because they were shocked
Mhm.
instead of like authority or something, but like it still commanded this kind of attention. Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, when I first like read his voice, it was like it's off-putting, like those capital letters, just like his voice probably was to people around him. Like it was a little off-putting, kind of annoying at first, but it really grew on me, and I couldn't wait, to see what he says next. So yeah, it was a good effect. But yeah, I could just like those. Also, it just God, his voice in my head, like every time, like I still hear it. Like every time I read those capital letters, like the voice automatically comes in my head.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's just automatic.
Effective device. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I didn't like at first, but then grew to be like, oh, actually, yeah, this works. Yeah. It's worth thinking about. Yeah, absolutely, man. But yeah, they
And
changed and they sorry, yeah, go on, dude.
oh no, yeah, they changed his voice in the movie to not be as grating. It just sort of sounds like a little kid's voice, like
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time, so he could comfort um, the children, I guess. Yeah, he says that children listen to him because he's small and he has like a tiny voice too.
Yeah, because he looks like a child, but he has the maturity of like a pre, a puberty boy going through puberty.
Hmm.
So more maturity than like the third graders that they're saving on the bus or the children in the novel,
Yeah.
the refugees. But yeah, that's yeah, man, that's Simon Birch. Simon Birch. It's interesting, yeah, they consolidate the cast, which makes sense because it's a huge cast of characters in this. If they were to conclude, you only need one reverend character, I guess if you're shortening everything up, you don't need the three different reverends and like
Yeah.
priests involved in this, plus the back and forth to the current like, priest or director of the church that Johnny's currently going to in the novel in Canada. There's he's in there too.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, yeah, interesting stuff. All right, man. What do we book versus movie here? Which is better, book versus movie?
Well, I mean, the book, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the same.
I mean, the movie's all right. Stand alone. Don't go into it thinking you're getting anything really too much like A Prayer for Owen Meany. Also, I did want to ask you, what do you think of the name Owen Meany?
Huh. That's interesting too. I didn't think of it too much. But it's interesting that you learn that about halfway through the book, you learn that Owen is his middle name and his first name is Paul. Obviously, there's religious significance to this.
Mhm. I think Paul is who wrote Philippines, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I believe the story is Peter and Paul are brothers, right? But they're like the big, most loyal disciples of Jesus out of the 12. And I believe Peter and Paul were, yeah, they both have those sections in the New Testament. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was just thinking like, yeah, like the significance of him having the name of Paul.
Well, Paul was considered, I guess, it's considered first Pope, pretty
Yeah.
much, right? I
Yeah,
believe.
basically, yeah.
And which is odd because how much of Owen hated Catholics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I guess I know, well, yeah, Peter, um, I just know that I think he was the last one that Christ appeared to,
Yeah,
even though he betrayed Christ
right. He
earlier
betrayed
on.
him in a different way,
But
which is, yeah,
but he got like he's kind of the story where everyone is like talks about redemption, like
yeah,
you know, there's nothing you can do that would make God not love you. Um, but yeah, like yeah, Paul was interesting for his like original first name, but like Owen Meany, like I just kept thinking like it just sounds like owing meaning or like something about meaning.
yeah,
And like I don't know, like owing and meaning, there's something in there because it just like it can't just be a random name
right.
that he chose. Like
Yeah,
usually, like especially authors like Irving, they choose their names. They're pretty meticulous about what they choose, and it always has to have some sort of significance for the
yeah,
character.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hadn't considered the Owen Meany aspect of like the name too. First Lieutenant Owen Meany, Paul Owen Meany.
Yeah, it
But
was
yeah,
interesting to just something I just kind of thought of that couldn't really find anything about.
yeah,
Maybe someone wrote something on it, but
yeah. It's strange
um,
too, because like Owen, yeah, that's not really like a biblical name.
no.
but Paul is, yeah. And then like the fact that he was named after his dad, but didn't want to go by Paul, and then all the other Christ stuff, yeah,
And then meanie is like, yeah. I mean, the word mean is in there.
yeah,
That doesn't really describe Owen, but then it's like meaning.
yeah.
I
Or
don't know.
owing me,
Yeah.
owing me any, owing meaning symbolically, yeah. And then you think of like the like the Christ figure that he represents in the story.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if there's like a more, should listeners put it in the comments if there's like a more like a Latin root or something that has like that
Yeah.
we're missing here that might unlock this for us. But yeah, that too. And then Latin comes up in the story, right? Because Latin was the language of the church.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, interesting. All the political stuff that happens, but nothing about the Vatican too in the 60s there in the but
Yeah. Well, they
I guess
weren't,
that's because that's Catholic mostly
yeah, they
instead
weren't
of
Catholic.
yeah,
It's like
still.
they were Congregationalists and what was the other one? Episcopalian?
Yeah, and then there was like a
Those ones.
non-denominational kind of angle to it too, which is something that was happening at that time, right? There was this
Mhm.
kind of the universalism, the hands across the world, the kind of the things that were happening, the We
Yeah.
Are the World song, like kind
Yeah.
of yeah, like all these like there was this kind of uh global universal humanity kind of being blossomed in, I would say, kind of like the kind of liberal ethos, which I don't even mean that necessarily politically as liberal versus conservative. I mean it more as like we call ourselves a liberal democracy or
Yeah.
something where like yeah, freedom and things like that, representation, but yeah, like this kind of global, I don't know, universalism where the like these kind of non-denominational churches started springing up a little bit more.
Yeah. They're
So
trying to like
maybe.
Christianity was trying to like let more people into the church, so they were
Yeah,
being a little less, they were being a little bit yeah, more liberal and accepting, less strict with some of the rules,
the
right?
times they are a changing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess Vatican II was kind of a result of that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All of that stuff. Yeah. It's interesting how that kind of plays into it. And it kind of plays into the boomer liberal politics, I think, too, a little bit
Hmm.
with that, which is interesting that Owen Meany, he's 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 almost a conservative figure, uh,
Hmm.
in terms of preserving the church and preserving conserving the church, conserving the stories, conserving the reverence around the miracle of the virgin birth or whatever during the Christmas pageant, the nativity, like just yeah,
Yeah, he
interesting.
didn't like the way Christian, like Ben Hur, or like The Robe. He was complaining about all the religious films that they weren't
Right.
reverent enough.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, he'd always be like, what does so and so with God or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever
What do coffee and
sidetracks.
donuts have to do
Yeah,
with drive?
yeah. Like anything that sidetracks the church from like talking about God and faith,
Yeah.
like he's just like, this is like, what are we doing here? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, he's definitely that type of figure.
Yeah. It's interesting. Interesting.
I
All right,
did
dude.
find out.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Anything we
Oh,
missed? Yeah.
I did find out what else the Simon Birch guy directed.
Okay, nice. What?
So he directed the Daredevil film from 2003, and
With
then Ghost
Affleck
Rider.
or
Yeah, that was a Ben Affleck one, and then Ghost Rider
with
with
Nick
Nicolas
Cage?
Cage.
Yeah.
And I guess he wrote the first thing he wrote was Grumpy Old Men, and then
Mm,
Grumpier Old Men. He didn't direct it though, so he started off with a couple of classics there.
yeah. And then he got like probably huge checks to direct those Daredevil and then Ghost Rider there and the
Yeah,
host Simon Birch. Yeah.
he
So
wrote
he,
Big Bully with Tom Arnold.
damn. So he's probably loaded then this guy. No wonder
Yeah,
he hasn't done anything since. Why would he?
he's done like stuff I've never heard of. He did Ghost Rider 2 or something.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But other than that,
Damn.
nothing I've heard of.
Damn, this guy was shit, that's what I'd do too. If I got those checks to do the two Ghost Rider movies, I'd be like, all right, I don't have to do anything else ever again.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. But all right, yeah, man. Any final thoughts on A Prayer for Owen Meany or Simon Birch or faith,
Uh,
themes, anything?
no, I
Hell yeah, we
think we
did.
covered everything I wrote down.
Hell yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
All right, I think we did it. Yeah, that and listeners listening, like Eric and I are doing this. We're calling it the Summer of Irving here. So we're planning to do the next one, I think, is we're gonna do The World According to Garp.
Yeah.
Same thing. We read the novel and then talk about the film adaptation. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's coming next. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be awesome.
Handles, where people find you, Eric.
It's on Twitter, organized meet at Bazillion Plus. Same thing on Instagram. I don't really check anything else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course that's linked to again, you guys know him. He's been on the show before. So all right, man. Yeah, this has been great.
yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time, dude. I mean, I know this was I didn't realize how big this book was when we first started. I was like, oh, it's a John Irving novel. It's probably like 300 pages. This one's like 650 pages. Like,
Yeah. Now he writes, yeah, he always comes in around 500, at least 500 pages. No, it was relatively like it moved along really well. So like I read it pretty quickly
yeah.
considering.
Oh, yeah.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy bored.
I may say male is entirely hostile. No! You know,
Resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources, American resources.
Being bored,
Some activities are intentional, right?
it shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.